Chapter 1267. Since it had already happened, Han Fei was the one who dug a pit for himself. However, Han Fei wasn't very panicked. What hadn't he seen before? Even if it was a forbidden secret realm with a slim chance of survival, so what? Anyway, he still had the old turtle with him. Even if the possessed Gue Sanqing couldn't get in, the soul of the old turtle was still in his sea of consciousness. After half a day, Han Fei called out Little Fatty and the punishing saber again. At this moment, Han Fei said to Little Fatty and the others solemnly, "You don't have much time left. At this time, improve your strength as much as you can. Consolidate your realm. Improve it first and then consolidate it." The tree spirit asked, "Master, will it be dangerous in 3 months?" Han Fei nodded slightly. Deep in the enemy's territory, anything can happen. As the saying goes, preparedness averts peril. We can't relax at all. Then Han Fei looked at Little Fatty and said, "You are the weakest one. You are only a peak-level junior sea demon. You have to work hard, okay?" Little Fatty's big eyes rolled. "If I have spirit awakening fluid, I can reach the intermediate peak level. If I go any higher, I can't make progress in 3 months. Han Fei certainly knew that more haste, less speed. When he used spirit awakening fluid to accelerate his breakthrough, his realm was also very unstable and his strength was very weak. It took him a lot of time to stabilize it. However, if he could become stronger first, why not? However, Han Fei was a little helpless. There was no spirit awakening fluid left. Suddenly, the tree spirit said, "If it's just spirit awakening fluid, there is still a little in the sea quelling painting." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Right, how could I forget this? When he first entered the sea quelling painting, the tree spirit treated him with spirit awakening fluid. Now, Han Fei clearly knew that the so-called spirit awakening fluid was just a diluted embodiment of Tao. Or, it was born under the influence of Tao. And the sea quelling painting originally belonged to the immortal palace or the king. Therefore, it was not surprising that there was spirit awakening fluid in the sea quelling painting. Han Fei asked, "How much exactly?" The tree spirit said, "Not too much. After all, this thing is actually only effective for creatures below the sea spirit state. At least the sea spirit realm had their own path of law enforcement. Generally speaking, no spirit awakening fluid is needed. So, it's probably less than 5 million caddies." Han Fei was the only one who was surprised. Everyone else was extremely calm. For Tree Spirit and the others, the spirit awakening fluid was useless. They didn't even drink it as tea, so Tree Spirit was the only one drinking it. The old tortoise probably wouldn't even bother to pick it up if it fell to the ground. Han Fei and Little Fatty's eyes glittered when they heard that the tree spirit had 5 million kilograms of spirit awakening fluid. Although these two poor people had been rich more than once, when they saw the things that people didn't want, they still felt really good. He asked for 5 million spirit awakening fluid from the tree spirit and didn't bother to distribute it. Now, only Little Fatty needed spirit awakening fluid. Han Fei took out the sun moon shell, poured all the spirit awakening fluid into it, and stuffed it into Little Fatty's mouth. "Drink as much as you can. That's all I can give you." Anyway, it was free, so Han Fei didn't care. In fact, even if Little Fatty was now a peak-level sea demon, it wouldn't help him. After all, its level was still a bit too low. Han Fei clearly knew that the reason why those people had powerful spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts was that they had lived too long. Whether it was himself or Little Fatty, they had too short a time to grow up. It was not easy to make up for this. The old tortoise said, "In this case, don't say that I didn't teach you. Although I don't know much about the 9 death soul-splitting octopus, don't take all your trump cards to that forbidden place. There's still room for negotiation." Han Fei thought to himself, the old tortoise must be quite worried about this trip. Normally speaking, if a super strong master who had been sealed for a long time was reincarnated, it would be a good way to survive. Who would be willing to go into danger? Han Fei said lightly, Fortune comes from danger. Even I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? If this trip succeeds, your strength will be doubled. Won't it be a piece of cake for you? 3 months later. 1,000,000 kilometers away from the Sea Demon King city. In the past 3 months, strong masters had observed Han Fei 3 times. However, they were all reminded by the old tortoise, so they didn't expose the tree spirit and the others. Little Fatty didn't consume the spirit awakening fluid extravagantly either. It spent nearly 2 months in battles, mostly defeating stronger opponents. Until now, it had just stabilized itself as a level 54 creature. In 4 months, it had broken through 1 major realm and 4 minor realms. This was definitely not a slow speed. Although it couldn't completely polish its foundation, it was not unstable. The most dangerous time was when it challenged a dark moon wolf fish that had just entered the intermediate sea spirit realm. 3 of Little Fatty's tentacles were broken. In the end, he was actually forced to a draw by it. This was thanks to Little Fatty's own characteristics, which could ignore all mental attacks within 10 levels and offset 90% of the enemy's attack power. These 2 abilities, no matter which creature it was, would at least be a legendary creature, but Little Fatty had them all. It was equivalent to being immune to both magic and physical attacks. How could it not be strong? And Han Fei, who had been practicing the demon god's scripture all the way, was almost a Tao. There were thousands of Tao in this technique. The demon god's scripture was divine, and all creatures were subdued. When Han Fei practiced this technique, he gradually discovered something. In terms of cultivation effect, this was equivalent to a technique that only cultivated realms, so it shouldn't be called an ungraded technique. However, as the demon god's scripture was divine, how could it not have some techniques? The phrase, all creatures are subdued, in the demon god scripture was the real value of this technique. This spell technique could be used to command living beings of the same or lower cultivation level as the caster. To be precise, it was not a command, but a hypnosis. Han Fei had tried it. With his current ability, he could hypnotize about 10 experts at the same level as him, provided that the opponent's soul was not that strong. It was different from the void lines. Although the void lines had been replaced by the 3 veins of the 3 light blazing cold lobster, it was still controlled like a marionette. The demon god's scripture was different. It was hypnosis. Those who were hypnotized could even exert their strongest combat power. Of course, although the effect was good, occasionally some creatures would break free from the hypnosis. This was inevitable. After all, the more creatures were hypnotized, there would always be a few exceptions. It could hypnotize nearly 100 sea spirit level creatures, which was enough to show how terrifying this technique was. If he could hypnotize sea demons, he might be able to hypnotize hundreds of them. Even if their realms were lower, the number might be even more terrifying. Of course, the number of hypnotized creatures depended on Han Fei's experience during cultivation. In fact, could he hypnotize so many creatures? Han Fei didn't know. Although there were many sea creatures, not all of them were there for him to experiment on. Knowing that he didn't have time to continue cultivating, Han Fei took back Little Fatty and the others. At this time, Han Fei didn't cross the void. The main reason was that, thanks to the old turtle's reminder, Han Fei was now very wary of the strong, so he had to do some divination every now and then. Just half an hour ago, Han Fei calculated that the road ahead would be very dangerous. Why was it dangerous? Han Fei didn't know. However, this was already close to the royal city's sphere of influence. A distance of 1,000,000 kilometers was actually very far, and even the venerables couldn't see from such a distance. As for the king, even if they could see him, would they see him? Besides, his luck was here, and the old turtle was also with him. Logically speaking, the king couldn't see him from a distance. Seeing that Han Fei seemed to be vigilant, the old turtle couldn't help saying, "I didn't feel any threat from the strong." Han Fei thought, "I just have a hunch. It may be the danger from the sea, or I'm overthinking." For 6 hours in a row, Han Fei's speed was neither fast nor slow. At this speed, if there was no danger in the first half, he would directly tear the void and go to the royal city. Just when Han Fei was perceiving the surroundings and checking the situation, he suddenly sensed a fluctuation in a secret realm. Ha! A secret realm? Han Fei couldn't help frowning. Did the danger he sensed come from here? Because it was a secret realm, it didn't matter how far he could perceive. Naturally, the old turtle couldn't perceive it either. The old turtle said, "Do you want to explore it?" Han Fei was slightly puzzled. If it can make me feel a little uneasy, this secret realm shouldn't be bad. Besides, even if there's danger, with the two of us joining hands, can't we explore a mystic realm? The old turtle said, "In this secret realm, there may already be people. There were many auras left here. Someone must have explored it." Han Fei's eyes flickered. That's right. But why did I have a problem with my calculation? It turned out that the real danger came from here. But what if someone was here? He and the old turtle, plus Yuan Dao, plus the punishing saber and the other four, could barely be regarded as 3.5 venerables. Thinking of this, Han Fei felt that if no venerable came out, who could compete with him? Immediately, Han Fei grinned. That's great. If we fight outside, it's easy for others to spy on us. But in this secret realm, the right time, the right place, and the right people are all in my hands. It's simply a free resource. Han Fei stepped in and immediately appeared in an undercurrent at the bottom of the sea. Where exactly was it? He didn't know. But as soon as Han Fei came in, he knew that something was wrong. The old turtle also shouted, "Young master, there's an ambush." Third. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1268. In the blink of an eye, as soon as Gue Sanqing, who was possessed by the old turtle, appeared, an array appeared under his feet and teleported him away. Although the old turtle was strong enough, he had his limits. He had been waiting for them to take the bait. So what if he was strong? Besides, the old turtle was only half a venerable at the moment. He had been washing Gue Sanqing's body all the way and didn't seem to be cultivating at all. Before Han Fei had a chance to think, at the moment when Gue Sanqing was teleported away, a scorching knife mark crossed the back of Han Fei's neck. Almost at the same time as the knife mark appeared, a water-shaped sound wave visible to the naked eye and a soul-piercing attack appeared. Under the triple bombardment, there were spider silk entangling Han Fei's feet. Han Fei's reaction was not slow. The moment he appeared in this space, he immediately used distance reduction and activated the proximity technique. As if expecting Han Fei's move, in the direction where Han Fei fled, the void suddenly exploded and was full of cracks, full of murderous intent. This was the drawback of the space shrinking technique. Although he had the ability to shrink the space, he didn't avoid it. As a result, if a void crack appeared, they would cut Han Fei in a faster way. In the past, the Fish Dragon King's way to deal with it was to pay a price and forcibly interrupt its execution. But even so, it was not very safe. Han Fei made up his mind. He might as well beat the Fish Dragon King at its own game. Immediately, Han Fei pretended to be tricked, and the space shrinking technique stopped halfway. Han Fei grunted, blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his body flew past several void cracks. Who would have thought that there would be a reversal? Someone was afraid that this couldn't hurt the Fish Dragon King, so he set up a string of red sand-like substances in this void crack. As soon as this thing came out, Han Fei felt that the heaven spirit detoxifying insect in his body moved. A large number of red poisonous things were hooked by the heaven spirit detoxifying insect and began to swallow them. Han Fei said to him via voice transmission, "Old Yuan, don't rush to take action. I'll put on a show. Let me see who is trying to trick me." Puff. Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood and protected his body with demonic energy, as if he was struggling to break through the poisonous fog. Cough, cough. Han Fei staggered and shouted in a low voice, "Who is the one who plotted against me? Come out. Ichthyosaur King, aren't you usually very arrogant?" My younger brother died in the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. Why are you still alive? As soon as Han Fei heard the voice, a person popped up in his mind, Yu Guang, ranked 9th on the heavenly talent list. This Yu Guang was originally Yu Hong's older brother. Due to his proficiency in poison, he had managed to defeat the Fish Dragon King by a fluke. Therefore, he was ranked 9th. It was also because of that incident that many people felt that the Ichthyosaur King was about to die. The Ichthyosaur King was in an awkward position. Those who were deemed worthy of challenge were the weakest among the 10 prodigies. Moreover, the Fish Dragon King just so happened to separate Yu Guang and Yu Hong's rankings. Now that Yu Hong had perished, whether or not the Fish Dragon King was the culprit, Yu Guang would only place this hatred on the Fish Dragon King. Apart from Yu Guang, there was also a shark man who was as strong as a muscular man. This person was the one who specialized in spatial rifts. Because his spatial rifts completely suppressed the Ichthyosaur King's close-distance technique, he was ranked 8th on the heavenly talent list. The shark man grinned and said, "Ichthyosaur King, I heard that your bloodline mutated after this trip. Hee hee. If you were still the old you, I wouldn't have bothered to attack you. But now, you can die now." Han Fei gnashed his teeth. "Yu Guang, Shark Maru, and a few pieces of trash want to kill me?" A woman in a black robe bellowed, "Ichthyosaur King, you call me trash. When we fought, we only had a 50-50 chance of winning. Who do you think you are?" A woman appeared in Han Fei's mind. She had evolved from a manta ray and was extremely cruel. Her bone spurs were extremely hard. Although her ranking was below 20, she was in the top 5 of the heavenly talent list in terms of defense. Han Fei gnashed his teeth and bellowed, "Gu Bu Yu, apart from your tough bones, what else can you do?" At this moment, another person said, "He was heavily wounded, poisoned, and trapped by my soul threads. He will definitely die today. What else do you have to say?" Bam! At this moment, dozens of kilometers away, the old turtle was fighting 4 people alone. Yu Guang sneered. "Yu Ding is right. Ichthyosaur King, you're dead today. Even if we're discovered, so what? Will the Venerable One attack the 4 of us just because of you? However, your Dragon King bloodline is not bad. It's suitable for my new poison." Shark Maru chuckled. "Ichthyosaur King, I heard that you were in the limelight on this trip. I wonder what kind of people the Cloud Sea Forest Tree and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City sent there. However, it doesn't matter. As long as you hand over your resources obediently, I won't do anything." Han Fei glanced at them coldly and thought to himself, "Old turtle, the 4 servants won't run away, will they?" The old turtle responded, "If they can't run away, do you want them to live?" Han Fei quickly realized what he meant. "Kill the 2 weakest ones and let the other 2 go. I'll only let Gu Buyu go and kill the rest." The old turtle said, "Huh. It seems that you've caused quite a stir this time." Han Fei sneered. "I'll take the resources that are delivered to my door. Besides, the current Ichthyosaur King is different from the previous one. I can show them." Then Han Fei gritted his teeth and roared, "You 4 shameless scoundrels, fight me fair and square if you dare." Shark Maru said disdainfully, "Ichthyosaur King, you're too conceited. You just have a Dragon King bloodline, right? In the world of cultivation, the strong prey on the weak. Fight me fair and square. Do you think this is the royal city?" Han Fei pretended to fluctuate his aura and suddenly burst out with demonic energy. He used distance reduction and chose to attack Yu Ding, who was using the soul-piercing technique. As if he had known that Han Fei would go on a rampage, Yu Ding immediately pulled him back with invisible threads behind him. At the same time, a large net swept across the sky and swept at Han Fei. Han Fei took a look, only to find that it was something like a soul lock. Chu Qingyan had used it on him before. However, it was absorbed by the demon purification pot. Han Fei was relieved. That's good. Since these people were all prepared, and he didn't want to kill them all, he might as well pretend more. Han Fei took a step back and thrust out his spear. Gu Buyu, on the other hand, unfolded a pair of white bone wings and forcibly resisted Han Fei's blow. However, she was also sent flying thousands of meters away by the attack. After all, no matter how embarrassed the Ichthyosaur king was, this heavenly talent whose ranking was much lower than hers couldn't compare to her. If defense could explain everything, who could compare to Han Fei? Shark Maru raised his knife and grinned hideously. Ichthyosaur king, I finally don't have to see your arrogant face anymore. The knife light bloomed, and at the same time, the phantom of a shark full of sharp teeth appeared. This was Shark Maru's companion spirit, which was also a shark. Seeing that Han Fei's strength seemed to have been greatly reduced, Yu Guang was overjoyed and thrust his spear at Han Fei's heart. Bam! Han Fei swept his spear and blocked the knife light. However, he was still stabbed to the seabed by Yu Ding. Feeling the soul power being absorbed by the void lines, with a puff, Han Fei pretended to spit out a mouthful of blood again. While vomiting blood, Han Fei let the soul forbidden net cover him. Han Fei roared, Gui Sanqing, run out and report what happened today to the venerables. Shark Maru and the others were slightly alarmed and shouted almost at the same time, he killed Gui Sanqing. He must die. Block the exit. Don't let him escape. Yu Guang sneered. Ichthyosaur king, you overestimate your followers. Gui Sanqing isn't weak, but how can we be worse than you? Today, you two can't escape even if you have wings. As he spoke, Yu Ding had already come to Han Fei's side and sneered. No one can escape from the soul forbidden net. Ichthyosaur king, you have nowhere to run. Yu Guang, Shark Maru, and the others had already walked to the net, looking at Han Fei contemptuously. Shark Maru said, Yu Guang, I'm taking my share. With that, Shark Maru walked to Han Fei step by step until he was less than 2 meters away from Han Fei. Then he slashed down with his long knife, intending to kill Han Fei directly. Clang! The next moment, something that dumbfounded everyone happened. The power of Shark Maru's knife fell on Han Fei's shoulder, but there was a faint smile on Han Fei's face, looking at them as if they were fools. Immediately, Shark Maru and the others' hearts tightened. What's going on? Almost subconsciously, the few of them wanted to retreat. However, in the next second, Han Fei had disappeared. Puff! With a tearing sound, Yu Ding, who was still immersed in the pleasure of killing the Ichthyosaur king, was torn in half. With another wave of his hand, the instant mystic spear pierced Yu Guang's chest. Shark Maru and Gu Buyu were shocked. Wasn't the Ichthyosaur king tied up by the soul forbidden net? How could it still attack? Besides, they discovered a problem at the same time, the Ichthyosaur king had become stronger, much stronger. Was it because of the opportunity on the front line? Shark Maru shouted, how is it possible? Yu Guang was a little dumbfounded at the moment. When he heard the sound of puff, he had already been pierced. But at the critical moment, purple light erupted, black smoke spread, and a large number of poisonous things spurted out, trying to stop Han Fei. However, the void lines had already blocked him. Yu Guang only felt that his soul was shaken, and part of his soul was controlled. But he was also a super strong master on the heavenly talent list. Condensing his soul into a knife, he tried to cut off the soul power controlling him. Unfortunately, the gap between their realms and absolute strength was obvious. Since Han Fei had already attacked, how could he resist? Just when Yu Guang was about to call out to Shark Maru, Han Fei's spear that had already pierced Yu Guang's chest exploded with demonic energy, directly blowing Yu Guang up. All this happened in less than a second. Two strong masters were sneak attacked and died in an instant. Seeing this scene, Gu Buyu's heart sank. Covered with white bones, he quickly retreated, shouting, Green Tongue, put down Gui Sanqing and save me. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1269. As soon as they heard Gu Buyu's cry for help, the people who were besieging Gui Sanqing all changed their expressions. 4 against 1. How could it be like this? Moreover, it was in a situation where the opponent was unprepared. There was no reason for him to lose. Although they were fighting on the side, they were also paying attention to this side. Han Fei had deceived everyone. At the moment when Yu Ding and Yu Guang died, the Dao-seeking state demons who followed them roared, "Young master." The two Dao-seeking realm demons collided with an invisible barrier as soon as they took a step forward. The old turtle's voice was indifferent. "Don't you think it's too late to leave now?" Han Fei ignored Gu Buyu. After piercing Yu Guang with his spear, he used distance reduction. As soon as he dodged, a red light chopped Yu Guang's body into pieces. Sha Maru took action, but he was still half a step too late. He knew very well that no one here could compete with the Fish Dragon King in terms of speed. If everyone could compete with the closed distance technique, how could the Fish Dragon King be ranked 10th on the heavenly talent list? Seeing that his attack failed, Sha Maru let go of his long knife, and then thousands of knife shadows formed a domain like a torrent of knife shadows. Sha Maru, as the 8th-ranked powerhouse, had a good reaction speed and timing. He knew very well that he couldn't escape from the Fish Dragon King, nor could he outrun it. Although he didn't know how the Fish Dragon King got rid of the Soul Forbidden Net, Yu Ding and Yu Guang died because they were too close to Han Fei. They were killed by a sneak attack. Sha Maru's ranking was higher than that of the Fish Dragon King. At this moment, he certainly wouldn't be scared just because Han Fei killed 2 people in a sneak attack. Instead, his face became fierce. These 2 people were dead, and Gu Buyu ran away. Not only did the Fish Dragon King's resources belong to him, but also all its properties in the royal city. Seeing that his attack was easily dodged by Han Fei, Sha Maru couldn't help but smile. "Although it's beyond my expectation, you still have to die in my domain." No matter how strong Sha Maru was, Han Fei didn't have to be afraid of him. He didn't care about Gu Buyu who had already run away. This woman posed no threat to him at all, so he could let her go. Han Fei raised his eyes, only to discover that he was surrounded by enormous holes that looked like sharp teeth, like a mouth full of sawtooth shark teeth. It looked quite appalling. From the outside, Han Fei looked like he was in a weird big mouth full of sharp teeth. Ga, he could only see those sharp teeth closing, the razor-sharp teeth biting the seawater, leaving white marks. However, Han Fei sneered in his heart. Looking at the sharp teeth that were about to close, he raised his hand and clasped a huge tooth with one hand. Kacha! The tooth blade was shattered, and Han Fei held the spear in a reverse grip, raised his hand, and performed the Monkey King 3000 sticks, and thousands of stick shadows appeared. Bang bang bang! Crack, crack, crack! Shark Maru looked disdainful and expectant, but when he saw Han Fei break the tooth blade with one hand, he was dumbfounded. Sha Maru was dumbfounded. This is the Ichthyosaur King. Sha Maru was not the only one who was dumbfounded. The 4 Dao-seeking great demons were also dumbfounded. That was Sha Maru's famous killer move. In the entire royal city, few people in the same realm could resist its power of chewing. Not even the previous Ichthyosaur King. However, this time, the Ichthyosaur King actually broke through the law enforcer with his bare hands. Jia Zhen Sanghai. While they were distracted, the old turtle launched a mountain-like tortoiseshell, covering all 4 Dao-seeking great demons. Among them, Yu Ding's follower was the weakest. His body was directly lowered and he knelt on the ground. Go to hell! The old turtle slapped this person's head. In an instant, this Dao-seeking great demon was torn apart. Facing the attacks of the others, with the protection of the turtle, the 3 people besieging Gue Sanqing were speechless. Not many people liked to fight with turtles. They were born with a shell, and the stronger they were, the harder their shell would be. The 4 of them wanted to capture Gue Sanqing and bombard him thousands of times, but one of them died first. The old turtle said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "When will you let him go?" "Wait a minute. Wait until I get out of the secret realm first." In Sha Maru's chewing domain, the tooth blade was shattered and the domain was about to be broken. Sha Maru frowned. The Fish Dragon King must have a big opportunity on this trip. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to break his domain so easily. They were all powerhouses in the top 10 of the heavenly talent list. There had never been a mysterious figure on this list. Now, seeing that the Fish Dragon King's strength had improved greatly, Shamaru turned around and left. After this confrontation, Shamaru confirmed that the Fish Dragon King must have a big opportunity this time. Not to mention how the Fish Dragon King broke free from the soul forbidden net, the Fish Dragon King's strength alone had already surpassed his. His physique was so strong that it left people speechless. Shamaru roared, "Uncle Bai, retreat." However, Shamaru was surprised to find that the battle dozens of kilometers away was far more intense than on his side. However, the battle was blocked in a space. Shamaru took a look and immediately retreated. Han Fei pretended to be temporarily blocked by the chewing domain, and when Shamaru was about to reach the exit, he blasted the domain with a bang. Shamaru was shocked. So fast. How did he break through my domain so quickly? Shamaru couldn't care less. The Fish Dragon King's strength was beyond his expectation. He had to find other ways to kill it in the future. Shamaru was relieved after leaving the secret realm. Looking at Gubuyu again, he had long since disappeared without a trace. Just when Shamaru was about to escape, he sensed that the Fish Dragon King had already left the secret realm. Hiss! It's out already. Swish! Swish! The distance between them seemed to have been shortened by half. Shamaru was horrified. He wasn't strong enough to tear the void and couldn't escape through the void. Therefore, in terms of speed, he was much slower than the Fish Dragon King. In just a few seconds, Han Fei had caught up with him and said with a smile, "You want to leave after ambushing me? Do you think you can set up an ambush whenever you want and leave whenever you want?" Shamaru roared, and the void shook. The sound waves stacked and rushed at Han Fei. Shamaru said, "Even if you have a big opportunity, so what? Your strength is weaker than mine by a level. Do you think you can make up for it with an opportunity?" Bam! 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 Shamaru was answered by the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. The 3,000 cascading waves smashed the sound waves in an instant. Shamaru blocked it with the two long knives in his hands. However, the moment he touched the long spear, Shamaru was shocked. "How can you be so strong?" Bam! Han Fei's figure flashed back and forth in the void. The long rod in his hand broke Shamaru's bones and blood flowed out. Shamaru roared, "Fish Dragon King, you can't kill me. My status is higher than yours. If you kill me, you will only bring trouble to yourself." Han Fei said disdainfully, "Maybe you don't know your current situation. Unless you go through the tribulation now and attract the attention of the venerables or the kings in the city, you will definitely die today." Shamaru was horrified. At this moment, he was covered with wounds. Wasn't he courting death if he went through the tribulation now? However, on second thought, the Fish Dragon King must not want to kill me directly, so he let me go through the tribulation. If he killed me with the power of the heavenly tribulation, he could get rid of me. Shamaru immediately shouted, "Do you think I don't dare to go through the tribulation?" As he spoke, Shamaru's strength suddenly skyrocketed, multiplying several times. The two knives forcibly blocked Han Fei's attack. Shamaru felt that the Fish Dragon King wanted to kill him with the heavenly tribulation, but why couldn't he protect himself with the heavenly tribulation? Although there might be some room for improvement in the sea spirit realm, it was not impossible to give up that space. If a heavenly talent like him went through the tribulation, he would definitely attract the attention of the venerables. At that time, if Han Fei attacked him again, someone would scold and stop him. Besides, during the tribulation, the Fish Dragon King couldn't attack him. Otherwise, the heavenly tribulation would definitely attack him. Shamaru directly released all the restraints on himself, and his strength soared. He was about to go through the tribulation. Han Fei looked at the rolling thunderclouds in the sky and was overjoyed. "That's right. If you don't go through the tribulation, what's the point of killing you?" At the moment when the tribulation clouds began to gather, Han Fei suddenly rushed into the range of the tribulation clouds. Sha Maru roared in shock, "Are you crazy? Could it be that you want to perish together with me?" Han Fei's figure flickered, and he had already inserted one hand into Sha Maru's back, and the void lines began to crazily devour Sha Maru's vitality. Baibei Royal City. Changshu Qin was calculating that the return of the Fish Dragon King should be in 1 or 2 days. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and he stood up abruptly. "Hey! Someone is going through the tribulation." Changshu Qin frowned. The place of the tribulation shouldn't be far away. Why did it choose to go through the tribulation here? It was either someone from the royal city or a sea monster. But what if those wild sea spirits wanted to go through the tribulation and enter the royal city? The place they chose was a little far away. Immediately, Changshu Qin's pupils constricted, and he murmured, "The Fish Dragon King?" Not only did Changshu Qin notice the strangeness, but many venerables also noticed it. They seemed to be confused about who was going through the tribulation. However, when someone saw Changshu Qin and another venerable tearing the void, they didn't get involved. In the royal city, in a palace on the peak of a certain mountain, a perception penetrated through. The tribulation was a divine punishment, and even kings couldn't see through it at this moment. However, they could also see a blurry picture. Huh! The kid who awakened the Dragon King bloodline. The moment Han Fei entered the range of the heavenly tribulation, the taste of the heavenly tribulation had changed. Sha Maru's vitality had been devoured by Han Fei, and he had already died. Now, because he used the sky-stealing technique frequently, the efficiency was almost twice as high as when he was in the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. Now, Han Fei could transform the vitality of one person into more than 2 years' worth of vitality. As soon as Sha Maru died, Han Fei, who had devoured Sha Maru's vitality, pretended to start the tribulation. That was Han Fei's purpose. Originally, he planned to continue to hide his strength, but in case someone saw through him, he might as well pretend that the Fish Dragon King was going through the tribulation. Then, he could really use the power of the Tao-seeking state. Who could see through him then? Roar! When the tribulation clouds gathered, thunder rumbled in the sky. When Changshu Qin and the others crossed the void, Han Fei was pretending to pass the third heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was purple. Changshu Qin and the others couldn't help but gasp when they saw it. At this moment, a golden dragon phantom came out of Han Fei's body and rushed to the heavenly tribulation. An earth-shaking dragon roar resounded across the sea. The second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1270. Han Fei passed the third thunderbolt under the nose of Changshu Qin and the others. At that moment, Han Fei was covered in scorch marks. There was no longer a picture of blood splashing on the sea. However, when the spiritual fruits appeared and were swallowed by Han Fei pretended not to see them and simply swallowed them. In fact, Han Fei didn't need to count to know that someone must be watching him at this moment. On the other side, in the secret realm. Seeing that Han Fei had succeeded, the old turtle pretended to make a mistake, let 2 people go, killed another one, and snatched the sun moon shell. Of course, it wasn't that the old turtle couldn't kill those people, but that he couldn't. Otherwise, he, a demigod, would have to face 4 enemies, 3 of whom were evenly matched with him. In the end, it was killed by him alone. Didn't that mean that he had surpassed the prodigies by a lot? Thus, the old turtle killed 2 of them. They were the followers of Yu Ding and Gu Buyu. Moreover, my acting was quite realistic. It looked as if my turtle shell had cracked. I made it look as if I had spent a lot of effort to kill 2 people. Bang! When a shark and a half-mermaid rushed out of the secret realm, the tribulation clouds in the sky hadn't completely dispersed. They could only see that someone was charred black on the surface of the sea. It seemed that he had succeeded in his tribulation. The old tortoise followed the 2 and appeared on the surface of the sea. He looked at Han Fei and looked at the 2 monsters. By Wushu, I will report what you did to me. How dare you attempt to assassinate the Dragon King's young master? This is a violation of King City's laws. In the distance, several venerable ones scanned the area with their perception and looked at each other. They already knew what was going on. Someone glanced at Zhang Shuai-qin. Are you going to handle this, or should I enforce the law? Zhang Shuai-qin glanced at him and said, You do it. I'm only in charge of the trial. It's fine as long as the Fish Dragon King isn't dead. The person beside Zhang Shuai-qin nodded slightly. He took a step forward and his pressure descended. The man waved his hand toward the sky, summoning thousands of lightning arcs from the tribulation clouds that had yet to dissipate. Han Fei's current state was just a disguise. Of course, he saw this scene, and his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. This person is very domineering. The lightning power dissipating from the tribulation cloud was actually all captured by him. At that moment, a person appeared in Han Fei's mind, the law enforcer of the royal city, Hai Tinglei. A heavenly spirit skate that had cultivated to the venerable realm was a great demon that could devour all the lightning in the world. This was one of the few experts in the White Shell capital city, an expert who had experienced 4 heavenly tribulations. As expected, this person was also undergoing the 4-9 monarch tribulation. But there were also people who said, swallowing thunder and eating electricity is only the great Tao of listening to thunder. In fact, he had forcefully swallowed the 4th lightning bolt during his tribulation. Either way, Hai Tinglei was a true expert. At this moment, Hai Tinglei appeared and his might descended. Everyone's spirits were shaken. The old turtle bowed his head and said, Law enforcer. Shark Maru and Yu Guang's followers were also horrified. Greetings, Lord Enforcer. Hai Tinglei casually reached into the void with one hand and directly grabbed Gu Buyu, who had escaped for a while, and brought him back. Gu Buyu's face was filled with terror. When she saw it was Hai Tinglei, her face suddenly changed, and she hurriedly said respectfully, Greetings, Lord Enforcer. Hai Tinglei snorted softly, and Gu Buyu knelt down, blood oozing from the corner of his mouth. Then Hai Tinglei glanced at Bai Wushu and Shark Maru. Gu Buyu, Yu Guang, Shark Maru. Me, and one more. With that, Hai Tinglei's big hand blasted through the previous secret realm, and with a slight surprise, he grabbed 4 incomplete bodies. Among them, Yu Guang and Yu Ding had already died, along with 2 Tao-seeking state great demons. Hai Tinglei couldn't help but take a deep look at the old turtle and said in a slightly low voice, Gue Sanqing, did you also have an opportunity? Gue Sanqing hurriedly said, Lord Enforcer, young master had an opportunity to sort out the hidden diseases in my body and improve my strength. Oh. Hai Tinglei couldn't help but glance at Han Fei. Gue Sanqing's words seemed reasonable. Gue Sanqing was not weak, and it was useless for the 4 Tao-seeking demons to kill him. His original body was a turtle, and his defense power was terrifying. Even if he was attacked by a venerable, he could still resist. But how could Gue Sanqing kill 2 of them under the siege of 4 of them? This was very surprising. This was not something that an ordinary semi-venerable could do. Han Fei was surrounded by demonic energy. Hai Tinglei glanced at Zhang Shuai-qin. Anyway, he's going to the Forbidden Land level secret realm. Giving him some resources now is not a special help. Zhang Shuai-qin nodded slightly, waved his hand, and a huge amount of spiritual spring wrapped Han Fei, and threw out 100 spiritual fruits. This time, the Fish Dragon King survived, which was really beyond his expectation. Giving him some spiritual spring and spiritual fruits was nothing. Besides, venerable ones were not interested in these things at all. Of course, Han Fei had to cooperate with the absorption. Seeing a spiritual energy vortex appear, the unstable strength of a beginner Tao-seeking state cultivator began to gradually stabilize. Seeing this, Hai Tinglei glanced at Gu Buyu and the other 2 who were still alive. Gu Buyu, Yu Guang, Shark Maru, and Yu Ding conspired without authorization to ambush the Fish Dragon King, a heavenly talent of the royal city. Can you refute this crime? At this point, who dared to refute it? The venerables were not fools. Gu Buyu immediately shook his head. Buyu pleads guilty. Please punish me, Lord Law Enforcer. Hai Tingley was expressionless and snorted. Since the Fish Dragon King is not dead, Shark Maru, Yu Guang, and Yu Ding deserve to die. Gu Buyu is sentenced to guard the Wall of Death for 30 years. Any objections? Hearing the words, Wall of Death, Gu Buyu trembled all over and gritted his teeth. Buyu accepts the punishment. Hai Tingley grunted softly and ignored Gu Buyu. Instead, he looked at the other two. Bai Wushu, Yu Qing, although it's not wrong for you to follow your master, on the path of cultivation, choices are also very important. You will be sentenced to guard the Demon's Sealing Tower for 30 years. Any objections? Both of them trembled at the same time. Han Fei seemed to be able to sense their fear. He thought to himself, where is the demon suppressing tower? He knew that the Wall of Death was the empty sea that isolated the 36 Xiantian realms. The so-called guard was actually equivalent to exile. Gu Buyu was also a heavenly talent. If he was exiled and left to fend for himself for 30 years, the capital would no longer provide resources and trial support. At that time, if Gu Buyu worked hard enough, he could still search for some opportunities near the Wall of Death on his own and catch up with the heavenly talents of the capital. But the Demon's Sealing Tower didn't exist in the Fish Dragon King's memory. Wait. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. It wasn't that there was no such thing. In the Fish Dragon King's memory, there was news about forbidden areas. It seemed that this Demon's Sealing Tower was one of the main forbidden areas. However, the Fish Dragon King had never challenged a forbidden area because he once challenged a purgatory-level difficulty and felt that he was about to die. After coming out, he was half dead and had to recuperate for 3 months. Seeing that the two semi-venerables were trembling, Han Fei couldn't help but think, it seems that I also have to go to the Forbidden Land level trial field. He couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. I'm afraid it won't be easy. Bai Wushu and Yu Qing lowered their heads and said in unison, no objections. Han Fei thought to himself, they're already scared to death and still have no objections. It seems that this Hai Tingley's deterrence is very strong. Seeing that the two had no objections, Hai Tingley nodded slightly and looked at Chengshuiken. It seems that the Fish Dragon King's trip is not small. Since you're not guilty, I won't stay any longer. When the time comes, Shark Ball, Yu Guang, and Yu Ding's properties will be sent to the Fish Dragon King's residence. But since Gu Buyu survived and was sent to guard the place, the resources will be left. Chengshuiken nodded slightly. Okay, you decide. I'll wait here. Hai Tingley reached out and grabbed the 3 of them and took them away. The other 2 venerables didn't show up at all. They just glanced at them, learned the result, and then left. After half an hour, Han Fei slowly woke up, and the scorched flesh on his body cracked and shattered. When he saw Chengshuiken, Han Fei pretended to be stunned and hurriedly said, Venerable? Chengshuiken smiled faintly. It seems that you did have a lot of opportunities on this trip. No wonder you have the courage to challenge the difficulty of a forbidden area. Since you want to challenge it, you've chosen the path yourself. You have to walk on it. Since you are forced to go through the tribulation, I will give you half a month to consolidate your strength and give you a life-saving means. You will enter the trial in half a month. Han Fei complained in his heart, you've misunderstood me. If I knew that time equals danger, I would have gone to the capital long ago. Why would I waste my time outside? However, of course, Han Fei couldn't say this now. It was probably God's will that he had to go to this forbidden land. Han Fei seemed to have a sense of pride from the bottom of his heart. Thank you, Your Excellency. The Dragon King has been preparing for this trip for a long time. I must try my best in that forbidden land. Anyway, going to the forbidden land was inevitable. Han Fei had no other choice but to make it sound better. Besides, since it could be called a forbidden land, it must be dangerous and opportunity coexisting. The more dangerous it was, the greater the degree of the opportunity and the trial. Others might have to worry about dying in it, but as long as the so-called forbidden land was not extremely strong, they would not be afraid of it. Since he wasn't afraid of challenging someone of a higher cultivation level, why couldn't he give it a try? Seeing Han Fei's expression, Cheng Shuiqin couldn't help but chuckle. Fish Dragon King, I haven't seen your strength with my own eyes. However, I find that you are getting more and more arrogant. I hope you can come back alive from any forbidden land. By then, I'll be waiting to see you enter the top 5. The third update. I didn't get home until 5:00 today. I just revised the article and was half an hour late. I've been a little busy recently. Life events are waiting for me to solve. End of this chapter. Chapter 1271. The Sea Demon King City was the holy land in the eyes of all the sea demons. At this moment, it was unfolding in front of Han Fei's eyes. This was still a trench. Looking from the outside, this trench was very wide. The crack seemed to be hundreds of kilometers long. From the surface of the sea to the depth of the trench, it was nearly 80 kilometers. From the depth of the trench to the King's City, it was more than 20 kilometers. In this way, from the surface of the sea to the White Shell King City, it had to be 100 kilometers deep. This also meant that even peak-level hidden fishers wouldn't find a magnificent city under their feet when passing by on the surface of the sea. When Han Fei entered the trench, he seemed to have fallen into some kind of barrier. He immediately discovered that there was a problem with the pressure here. When he came down from the trench, the water pressure suddenly became countless times lighter. This feeling was the same as the feeling of being hundreds of meters under the sea. Han Fei was stunned. What's going on? The old turtle said, what's the fuss about? Since there is a king guarding this area, the entire trench can be sealed. You can think of this place as the sea surface. The deeper you go, the pressure is the same as the normal seawater. Han Fei didn't speak, and Cheng Shuiqin had already left. When he just entered the trench, someone had already scanned him. When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that at the entrance of the trench, about a kilometer deep, there were 2 huge stone turtles lying on the left and the right. Each of them was more than 300 meters long and they were still alive. The old turtle roared, "Damn it, how dare he let my people guard the gate? This king deserves to die." Han Fei said contemptuously, Hey, hey, hey. Don't pretend to be close to me. There are so many kinds of turtles. Since when are they your clansmen? The old turtle said, I am the strongest of the turtle clan. Why can't I be the ancestor of all turtles in the world? Han Fei said contemptuously, don't brag. If another big turtle surpasses the emperor realm, it might trample through the void and kill you. The old turtle snorted. What do you know? Those stronger than me should be dead. Seeming to realize that he had said something wrong, the old turtle's voice stopped abruptly and he didn't say a word. Han Fei frowned. Those stronger than the old turtle should be dead, right? The old tortoise had personally said that one could become an emperor with longevity and become a god with the Tao. This meant that, as far as the old turtle knew, there were at least 2 more realms above the emperor realm. Han Fei vaguely guessed that there must be a big secret. For the gods to fall, how big of a thing must have happened? However, these secrets were not something that could be figured out just by thinking about it. That involved too much history. Before the end of days, perhaps there was an even longer history. Han Fei swam all the way to the capital. In his memory, King City was in the center of the sea, about 3,000 miles away from here. This was because the trench did not reach the bottom in one go. There was a gradual downward slope. Therefore, Han Fei saw a lot of luminous creatures. When Han Fei walked 100 kilometers, he found that most of the creatures here were luminous. Even the most common seaweed was luminous seaweed. There were schools of fish, shells, crabs, starfish, conches, sea anemones, sea cucumbers, jellyfish. There were too many species to count. The strength of these creatures was not strong. Han Fei even saw a large number of creatures that had just been awakened, and there were also many creatures that had fully awakened and developed intelligence. They seemed to have long been accustomed to the appearance of strong masters. So, there was no need to be afraid at all. After all, the strong masters wouldn't have nothing better to do than to fight them. As he continued to move forward, the creatures Han Fei encountered became stronger and stronger. From the ordinary creatures at the beginning to some sea beasts, such as serpents, octopuses, king squids, emperor belts, giant conches, and countless others. These creatures didn't seem to have territorial awareness, and they probably didn't dare to have territorial awareness. In Han Fei's memory, the reason why these creatures could appear outside the king's city was that someone specially searched for them and brought them back. They also needed to go through some training, battles, and killings. After being eliminated again and again, the strong had a chance to enter the king's city. When Han Fei returned to the city, he changed into the Fish Dragon King's clothes and hung up his exclusive ID card. This card was actually the Demon Heritage level card. In the Sea Demon King's city, strength was not what mattered to those below the venerable level, but demonic heritage. As soon as Han Fei took out his purple card, those who saw it retreated. They were the top heavenly talents with level 7 demonic heritage and the highest status in the king's city. Some creatures could see that Han Fei's waist card was a level 8 low-quality demonic heritage, so they didn't dare to block his way. On the way to the king's city, the strongest expert Han Fei had seen was only at the peak level of the sea spirit state, and there were no Tao-seeking state creatures wandering outside the king's city. At this moment, Han Fei looked at the mountain in front of him and was quite amazed. This place was dazzling. The White Shell King's city was not large, only about 50 kilometers in length and breadth. However, the construction of the king's city was extremely splendid. The ancient gate, which was 10,000 meters long and thousands of meters high, had the words, White Shell King's City, written on it solemnly. Han Fei felt that his eyes were a little sore after just a few more glances. He had experienced this feeling when he explored the Fiery Mountain, the strongest secret realm in the level 2 fishery. These 4 words were a great technique. His million knife art and 10,000 knives in one were deduced from the words on the Fiery Mountain. Although Han Fei wanted to push out this technique in front of him, he would definitely be noticed if he stayed at the gate for a long time. But now, the last thing Han Fei wanted was to be noticed. It would be great if he could keep a low profile so that no one would notice him. Also, at the gate of the city, there was a row of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. There was a group every 1,000 meters, and there were 10 groups in total. If he were to stand here and read the words, people would think that he was an idiot, wouldn't they? Although the gate was 10,000 meters long, there were 2 jade pillars that were made of blue jade, 100 meters thick and 1,000 meters high, that were even more magnificent than the gate. On the left and right pillars, there were 10 words, Heaven and Earth contain mysteries, Waterfall Hidden Dragon City. The 2 pillars stood on both sides like 2 vertical lamps. The pillar-shaped luminous pearls illuminated the surroundings. Han Fei landed here and looked at the 2 groups of shrimp soldiers and crab generals in front of him, who were saluting him, but he didn't say anything. After all, they were just gate guards, and they were on duty. Even if they knew him, they couldn't say hello to him at work, could they? Maintaining the Fish Dragon King's usual arrogance, Han Fei simply ignored these shrimp soldiers and didn't even nod at them. This gate was actually equivalent to a portal. Outside the gate, he could only vaguely see some blurry scenes of the capital. In fact, the capital was surrounded by a layer of water mist. When Han Fei stepped into the gate, his eyes suddenly opened up. The first thing that came into view was a splendid golden palace. Above the 1,000-meter water area was the living space of some sea beasts and jellyfish. Among them, there were powerful jellyfish, like giant light bulbs, their bodies emitting various colors of light, illuminating the entire capital. And the roof of the ancient building that seemed to be paved with gold almost blinded Han Fei's eyes. This immediately reminded Han Fei of Master Hexagon. What if it saw this? It would love this place to death. How did the king of this capital become a king? In another area of the sea, in another palace, there were all kinds of dazzling treasures and stones. A big starfish with 6 tentacles was lying on this pile of treasures. Who else could it be but the hexagon starfish? Around the starfish, a big octopus was kneading the starfish's tentacles, and a clam girl stood beside the starfish. Occasionally, the starfish raised its tentacles, and the clam girl would pick up the jar in her hand and pour a dark green liquid. Swish! Suddenly, the starfish's 6 tentacles suddenly lit up. The starfish couldn't help but shiver and murmur, "Why am I making a breakthrough again? Alas, I have to consolidate my strength again. When will it end?" Han Fei looked at the splendid palace, which looked a bit like the Dragon Palace on TV. It seemed that there were all kinds of rare treasures hidden here. However, the golden-laid fish bones and aquatic plants were so stylish that Han Fei couldn't help but return to reality. Han Fei looked to the right, stepped into the air, and flew to the cave house where he was. That was the Fish Dragon King's cave house. Many of the Fish Dragon King's treasures were left at home. Different from the outer sea, in the Baibei royal city, there was no such thing as stealing. If you were strong enough, you could steal. But if you were discovered, you would be banished from the capital forever. In the Baibei royal city, everything you wanted could be fought for in the trial's secret realms instead of by stealing. Therefore, each and every household's cave abode had a specific array formation planned out. Once there was an abnormal change in the array, someone would notice it immediately. At that time, it would be impossible to escape. It was 50 kilometers long and could accommodate 100,000 people. Except for those who lived in the sky above the capital and acted as light bulbs, there were even fewer people in the city. However, when Han Fei rushed to the Fish Dragon King's residence, he found that dozens of people were waiting at the gate of the residence. Han Fei was intrigued. What's going on? Are they blocking the gate to cause trouble? First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1272. In front of the Fish Dragon King's residence, dozens of people blocked the gate and seemed to be waiting. Needless to say, they were waiting for the Fish Dragon King, which was Han Fei now. When Han Fei entered the city, these people seemed to have known that Han Fei had arrived. So, they all turned their backs to the gate and looked in the direction where Han Fei came from. Han Fei scanned with his senses and found that although there were familiar faces in this group of people, there were no familiar faces of heavenly talents. These people seemed to be the servants of some heavenly talents. They shouldn't be here to make trouble. Suddenly, Han Fei turned his head and looked at a high-rise building 10 kilometers away. Someone was looking at him with scorching eyes. Han Fei was stunned and thought, what's the meaning of this? When Han Fei took a closer look, he was slightly stunned. Sure enough, there were still experts on the heavenly talent ranking paying attention to him. This person was neither a half-merman nor a merman, but a shrimp man. However, he couldn't be called a shrimp soldier. Because this person was ranked 6th on the heavenly talent ranking and had the strongest shrimp clan bloodline in the Baibei royal city. This person was named Prawn Yue. He was wearing bright red armor and a shiny helmet. On the helmet, there were 2 crystal and sharp shrimp whiskers. This person had 2 feet and 6 hands, each holding a sharp thorn. The two of them looked at each other, and Han Fei immediately remembered Prawn Yue's voice transmission. I heard that you had a lot of opportunities this time. You killed Shark Maru and Yu Guang in one battle. And you even passed the tribulation in advance? Han Fei realized that this person hadn't passed the tribulation yet, had he? Among the top 10 of the heavenly talent ranking, only the top 3 had passed the tribulation. However, a guy named Zhang Xiaotian, who was ranked 4th, refused to pass the tribulation. This person bluntly said that he was ranked 4th and was waiting for someone to replace him. As a result, the top 3 of the heavenly talent ranking in the Baibei royal city never needed to fight. Zhang Xiaotian didn't refuse anyone who wanted to fight. Because Zhang Xiaotian refused to pass the tribulation, none of the people behind him passed the tribulation. Heavenly talents were all proud creatures. If someone was so strong without passing the tribulation, how could they, as heavenly talents, pass the tribulation easily? Han Fei frowned. If it weren't for the special circumstances, why would I pass the tribulation? Prawn Yue nodded in agreement. That's right. Only those who survive have the right to be proud. Shark Ball and Yu Guang, it looks like you've underestimated your opportunity this time. Han Fei curled his lips and said, hee hee. They just know that this Dragon King wants to barge into the forbidden grounds and are worried that I will be too strong and break through their positions. How is that underestimating? The corners of Prawn Yue's mouth curled up into a smile. You're already so proud when you face me now. It seemed that there was indeed a great opportunity at the front lines this time. Since you're so confident, then let me see what gives you such confidence. Han Fei frowned. This shrimp Yue doesn't seem weak. Although Xiaochen did not take it to heart, if he displayed the appearance of consecutively defeating the experts of the proud Son of Heaven ranking and rising through the ranks like a hot knife through butter, it would seem a little too fast. In Han Fei's impression, Prawn Yue was ranked 6th, but he was one of the top 5 goalkeepers. He had once declared that he could challenge Zhang Xiaotian first, and only by defeating him would he have the right to challenge Zhang Xiaotian. The Fish Dragon King once challenged this person and suffered a crushing defeat after taking 13 attacks. The old turtle said, this person shouldn't be weak either. If my guess is correct, he should be a refined fire shrimp spirit who has cultivated into a human being. His defense, speed, control of fire elements, and gunmetal armor are all excellent. Unfortunately, his demonic heritage is not strong enough. He's much weaker than I was back then. Han Fei sweated. Old Yuan. Has anyone ever told you that you're narcissistic? The old turtle snorted. I'm telling the truth. Ignoring the old turtle, Han Fei glanced at Prawn Yue indifferently. When I come back from the forbidden grounds, you'll be the first one I challenge. Puchi. Suddenly, a chuckle echoed, and a woman in a green dress walked out of a red jellyfish-shaped building. The woman smiled and said, Fish Dragon King, are you afraid of a fight? Are you going to refuse a fight? Han Fei knew this woman. She was a clam girl named Green Silk Spirit, who ranked 5th. She was a talkative clam demon, but her strength was not to be underestimated. In Han Fei's memory, the Fish Dragon King had never fought this woman. In fact, very few people dared to challenge this woman. Because this woman had taken the Hell Level trial 8 times in a row and returned safely. However, this woman reminded him that the Fish Dragon King was an extremely proud person. In the face of a challenge, even if he was no match for his opponent, he couldn't back down. A battle was definitely going to happen. Immediately, Han Fei stopped in midair and looked at the two of them casually. I don't fight just because of the forbidden grounds. Do you think I'm scared? The Green Silk Spirit chuckled. Aren't you? Or could it be that you, the Fish Dragon King, have become timid after being ambushed once? At this moment, Han Fei sensed thousands of senses scanning him. How many people were watching this scene? After all, many people were curious about his current strength after he killed Shark Ball and Fish Light in the outer sea. If it were the Fish Dragon King in the past, Prawn Yue wouldn't have come to challenge him. Because he was very sure that the Fish Dragon King was no match for him. But now, Han Fei had killed the 8th and 9th heavenly talents on the heavenly talent list, and his rank had risen to the 8th. If there was no accident, his strength should have improved a lot. Now, Prawn Yue and the others just wanted to see Han Fei's strength. Han Fei thought, although this ambush was quite secretive, the law enforcers of the royal city have already punished them. If I'm not mistaken, they have already reported it. After all, for Hai Tinglei and the other strong masters, this was their job. It was not a good idea to let the royal city be lifeless every day. They had to make some noise from time to time. Han Fei thought, I'm afraid I can't avoid this battle. At this point, if I still avoid the battle, it wouldn't be in line with the Fish Dragon King's personality. One must know that when he first met the Ichthyosaur King, it was so excited to beat up a bunch of guys who were much weaker than it was. Now, he had no reason to avoid this kind of battle. Han Fei suddenly grinned. When have I ever been afraid of a battle? Don't you just want to see my current strength? Since you want to see it, I'll show you carefully. Prawn Yue grinned. This is the Fish Dragon King I know. In that case, let's fight. After that, Prawn Yue's whole body was burning, and with a swish, he rose into the sky like a flame and went straight to the sky. In the Baibei royal city, fighting was a hot-blooded thing. Only through fighting could the gap in strength and realm be reflected. Therefore, the sea demons thought that this was something that could be admired by tens of thousands of people. Just like in the arena of the 10,000 Demon Valley, countless people watched as if they were watching a game. In the Baibei royal city, the battlefield was not in the buildings, nor underground, but in the sky above the royal city. It was 3,000 meters above the Baibei royal city, and there was a king's seal. You could enter and fight, but the aftermath of the battle wouldn't be affected. Once you touched the seal, you would be stopped. Han Fei glanced at the gate of the Fish Dragon King's house. Those people were also watching and didn't seem to be in a hurry to wait for a while. Han Fei activated the close distance technique and crossed 1,000 meters with one step. In 2 steps, he had already appeared in the sky. The close distance technique was the standard symbol of the Fish Dragon King. At this moment, he had to use it. When the two of them reached the sky, the sea beasts that were wandering above the royal city all gave way to them. Han Fei didn't expect that he would have to perform in front of the whole city as soon as he came to the Baibei royal city. Shrimp Yue said, "You've just passed the tribulation and haven't had time to consolidate your strength. I won't embarrass you. You can use the power of the Tao-seeking state." Han Fei sneered. "Do you think I'll take advantage of you? I've never been afraid of someone in the sea spirit state." In the city, many people scanned their senses, and more people walked out of their homes. A servant with a level 6 demonic heritage exclaimed, "The experts on the heavenly talent list are really terrifying. They are already so strong, but they still fight all day long." Someone sneered. "Do you think they are the same as us? Which one of those who can become a supreme prodigy is easy?" Someone sighed. "Do you think the Fish Dragon King has a chance this time?" Someone couldn't help but say, "Of course, no matter how fast his strength grows, he can't possibly challenge Shrimp Yue from the 10th place on the heavenly talent list, can he?" Someone guessed, "If the Fish Dragon King doesn't suppress his realm, he won't lose anyway, right?" Someone pondered. "The point is, how can he not suppress his realm?" Apart from the ordinary people discussing, some heavenly talents were also watching coldly. For example, a bald young man suddenly appeared beside Qing Si Ling and said calmly, "To be able to take on 4 opponents at once, you're not weak." Qing Si Ling was surprised. "Xiaotian, when did you come back?" This little bald man was Zhang Xiaotian, who was ranked 4th. He was in the purgatory trial, but now he had returned. Zhang Xiaotian looked up at the sky. "It's boring, so I came back. I wanted to try the Forbidden Land trial, but the Fish Dragon King was 1 step ahead of me." In a certain palace, a venerable turned his head. At this moment, he was also watching the battle. There were few things that could attract their attention now. The heavenly talent battle was just a show. After all, not all venerable ones cultivated wholeheartedly. Most of the venerables were quite practical. Some venerables who had no hope of breaking through were even more bored. In the sky, Han Fei pretended to lower his realm, holding the red spear as if he were holding a red light. Han Fei said, "Since when can a shrimp be compared to me? Look at my spear." Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1273. Under the gaze of thousands of people, Han Fei attacked. The spear light was simple, but the spear technique dumbfounded countless people. Han Fei raised his foot and disappeared. While Han Fei disappeared, Prawn Yue held the 6 ice thorns in his hands. In an instant, they pierced through the void. Within a kilometer, a giant cone appeared in the void at an extremely fast speed. Han Fei appeared in this space. The moment he appeared, he moved his body. The instant mystic spear in his hand had been thrown out. As if the distance between them had been shortened, he appeared directly in front of Prawn Yue. Ha! When Han Fei launched this attack, many people saw the clues. In the outer sea, Han Fei mostly encountered sea spirits and Tao-seeking great demons. Usually, he wouldn't use the instant mystic spear. Usually, he would use his strongest strength to kill them directly. At this moment, in the Baibei royal city, where sea spirits and Dao seekers were everywhere, Han Fei's movement was immediately noticed by some people. Changshui Qin was slightly surprised. The law of time. A venerable was puzzled. He's mastered the law of space and the law of time at the same time. This fish dragon king is indeed capable. It seems that the Dragon King bloodline can't be underestimated. In midair, at the moment when time froze, Prawn Yue was shocked, thinking that his mind was wandering. Flames burst out on the thorns in his hands and blocked in front of him like a fire shield. With a crisp ding, a seemingly weak ripple spread out dozens of kilometers in the sky, almost covering the entire White Bell's capital city. Crack, crack, crack. Clang, clang, clang. Cracks could be seen on the flame shield, but taking advantage of the moment when the flame shield was about to shatter, Prawn Yue's 6 limbs flapped and attacked more than 30 times. His figure explosively retreated, only then was he able to withstand the attack. At this moment, Prawn Yue's arms trembled slightly. How did the Fish Dragon King become so fast? Also, its power was more than 30% stronger than the Fish Dragon King's. Down below, Zhang Xiaotian's pupils constricted. It's the law of time. The Fish Dragon King has mastered the law of time. No wonder he could kill Shamaru and Yu Guang. Qing Siling couldn't help but frown. The law of time. Isn't it the law of space? How did it become the law of time? Zhang Xiaotian shook his head. No, time paused for a split second when the spear projection was pointed. However, the Ichthyosaur King's grasp of it is not exquisite enough. It should be because the time it took to comprehend it was too short. Otherwise, Prawn Yue would have already been defeated. Prawn Yue retracted his expression. The Ichthyosaur King was indeed no longer the Ichthyosaur King of the past. Just this move alone was worthy of him taking it seriously. Han Fei was also surprised. The closed distance technique coupled with momentary time was actually blocked. This meant that Yue's reaction speed was extremely fast. Also, Han Fei found that the 2 tentacles were gone. He took a step forward and crossed 1,000 meters. The 2 tentacles were like invisible whips in the air, brushing past his chest and cheeks. In the eyes of outsiders, Han Fei almost slid past the 2 extremely sharp cracks in the void. If they were not careful, they would be torn apart. But in this shocking scene, Han Fei didn't even look back and stabbed the spear back. With this stab, the demonic chi turned into a dragon and charged forward. Prawn Yue smiled disdainfully. You still have the cheek to use such methods. Halfway through his words, Prawn Yue's face suddenly changed. He felt that his soul was shaken and a terrifying soul stab hit him. Puff! Blood spurted out of Prawn Yue's 7 orifices. Yes, blood spurted out. Unprepared, he took Han Fei's soul-stunning spike head-on. Of course he was injured. However, Han Fei hadn't mastered the soul-stunning spike after all. Half of the god-scaring painting hadn't been fully unfolded yet. Otherwise, if he had the complete version of the soul-stunning spike, he wouldn't dare to use it. No matter how many changes the Ichthyosaur King had, it was impossible for him to not only master the law of time but also a super powerful soul attack technique in just a few months. The reason why Han Fei dared to use it was that he hadn't mastered the law of time or the soul-stunning spike. The law of time was imitated by Han Fei. There was always a gap between an imitation and the original one. And he used the soul-stunning spike because the Ichthyosaur King was good at spear techniques. The soul-stunning spike was also a spear technique, but it was a soul spear technique. At the moment blood spurted out of Prawn Yue's 7 orifices, the dragon-shaped demonic energy rushed out, making a rumbling sound. In just one confrontation, Han Fei had used 3 killer moves. He wasn't afraid of being exposed. The Ichthyosaur King he disguised as was going to take the trial in the Forbidden Land. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't have some skills. Only then did Han Fei turn around. The spear in his hand vibrated with demonic energy and stabbed at Prawn Yue. Prawn Yue, who had been injured by Han Fei, fought back fiercely. He seemed to be seriously injured, but in fact, he wasn't. The instant mystic spear was blocked, and the soul-stunning spike didn't seriously injure his soul. As for the explosive spike, it only slightly injured Prawn Yue. At this moment, it was time for the fierce battle between the two. Lights and shadows flashed in the air and various combat skills appeared. Under Han Fei's deliberate action, his movement technique and combat skills were weaker than Prawn Yue's. But Han Fei's physique and strength, as well as the power of his soul, had become stronger. After fighting for about half an hour, Han Fei seemed a little tired. But at the same time, Prawn Yue wasn't much better. He could use a combat skill similar to the triple original body like Zhang Xuanyu did, but he still couldn't win. Down below. Qing's silk spirit said solemnly, "Not good. The Ichthyosaur King's strength has soared. He just hasn't fully digested this power yet. If he really survives the trial in the Forbidden Land, I'm afraid his strength will increase by another 20%. Zhang Xiaotian shook his head slightly. The Ichthyosaur King obviously didn't fully absorb the gains from this trip. No wonder he needed to stay outside for such a long time before coming back. He went to the Forbidden Land trial for 5 months and then went to the Forbidden Land trial to hone himself. Once he's exhausted, I'm afraid he can fight us." Qing's silk spirit's eyes turned cold. "Then let him have a try." In the eyes of those heavenly talents and servants with level 6 demonic heritage, such a battle was too unbelievable. This was not the power of a sea spirit at all. It was the power of a Tao-seeking state cultivator. Whether it was a battle of laws, combat skills, or soul, they didn't dare to think too much. Someone sighed. It's useless to watch such a battle. In a battle of heavenly talents, the laws are superior to ours. Their combat skills are also very special. We can't match them. Some people were excited and thought, it's all about cultivation. A level 6 demonic heritage isn't weak. There's a chance that they can become strong. Many Tao-seeking great beasts were thinking, is the Ichthyosaur King worth following? If the Ichthyosaur King can come back alive from the Forbidden Land trial, it's worth considering. As for the Venerables, they were relatively calm. Their views on strength were different because of their different horizons. No matter how talented one was, they had to live until they reached the venerable state. Unless this person had the potential to become a king, no heavenly talent was worthy of their support. Stop! A majestic voice came from the sky. A figure appeared. When everyone saw who it was, they lowered their heads. It was the law enforcer of the royal city, Hai Tinglei. Hai Tinglei glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, challenges are allowed, but killing is forbidden. In this battle, the Ichthyosaur King has the advantage in the Tao-seeking state, so he'll be ranked 8th on the prodigy list. The rest will automatically take his place. Hai Tinglei made this decision because Han Fei's combat power was weaker than Prawn Yue's. This was something that he deliberately revealed. Otherwise, if the gap in strength was too big, it would inevitably arouse suspicion or doubt. At this moment, Prawn Yue didn't get angry, nor did he look surprised. Instead, he took a deep look at Han Fei. You've improved in all aspects. That's good. I look forward to you challenging me again. Han Fei had never been afraid of a tough guy. He raised his head. Next time, you'll definitely lose. Speaking in this tone, Han Fei felt that his acting skills were on point, which was very in line with the Ichthyosaur King's character. Prawn Yue didn't seem to hear him. He smiled, inserted the spikes into his carapace with his 6 hands at the same time, and turned away. As soon as Prawn Yue left, the crowd dispersed, and everyone looked away. Han Fei felt someone's gaze. He turned his head, only to see a little bald man. He immediately narrowed his eyes. Zhang Xiaotian? In the Ichthyosaur King's memory, he seemed to have challenged this Zhang Xiaotian and was suppressed by him with one hand. And this Zhang Xiaotian was known to be invincible in the sea spirit state. So far, no one had been able to defeat him in the sea spirit state. If it was a challenge, Han Fei would rather suppress his cultivation and fight this person. After all, the top 3 of the heavenly talent list were actually just in name. He had already passed the tribulation. It was said that because he was too talented, his ranking remained in the heavenly talent list. It was said that as long as someone could defeat Zhang Xiaotian, one of the 3 of them would come out. Exchanging a glance with Zhang Xiaotian, Han Fei pretended to be displeased and snorted lightly. In a few steps, he reached the door of the Ichthyosaur King's house. Looking at the people who were still blocking the door, Han Fei said coldly, "What are you doing here?" However, one of them smiled and held a sun-moon shell in his hand. "Lord Dragon King, we are here to deliver something. These are all the resources of Master Yuding." Another person also held a sun-moon shell and said, "Master Dragon King, these are all the resources of Master Sha Maru." Master Dragon King, Han Fei was almost stunned. "Fuck you. Are you here to give me a gift? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Third update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1274. Han Fei received 12 sun-moon shells and 16 sea-swallowing seashells in total, which was everyone's resources except for Gu Buyu. Han Fei immediately regretted it. If he had known that the resources of whoever he killed would belong to him, he would have killed Gu Buyu as well. The reason why he had spared Gu Buyu was because her defense was ranked in the top 5 of the prodigy ranking. Moreover, he also wanted to let go of one person to spread his heroic combat skills. Who knew that before that person could run back to the capital city, he was sentenced? Han Fei didn't know why the 3 of them had 28 storage shells. It should be because Shark Maru and the others had their own accumulation. In any case, this number was very impressive. It was like a pie falling from the sky. If possible, Han Fei hoped that someone would ambush him every day. In this way, maybe he could receive sea-swallowing seashells every day. Han Fei had already simulated the aura of the Fish Dragon King with the art of deception. To put it bluntly, he was now the Ichthyosaur King. Therefore, he wasn't stopped at all when he stepped into the mansion's restriction. After entering the residence, the old tortoise was the first to speak. "This restriction is not bad. It is well hidden and is a type of fixed formation. It could blur the prying eyes of venerable ones, but it certainly could not block the prying eyes of a king tier. So, even though we're inside the mansion's restrictions, we still have to act." Han Fei said, "Isn't there only one king in the Baibei royal city? A king wouldn't peep at an elementary Dao-seeking realm cultivator like me, right?" The old turtle pondered for a moment, and his voice sounded in Han Fei's heart, "Generally speaking, they will. The perception of a king could cover every corner of this city, even every speck of dust. Eavesdropping on you is like playing a game." Han Fei's heart tightened. This is too fucking outrageous. Did kings really have such a fetish? For some reason, he thought of Zhang Xuanyu. If that guy became a king, he would probably like to spy on her people the most, right? Reminded by the old turtle, Han Fei certainly did not dare to do anything out of line. He still maintained the Fish Dragon King's usual arrogant posture. But out of instinct, curiosity, and thirst for knowledge, Han Fei grabbed all the sun-moon shells and sea-swallowing seashells to take a look. Han Fei thought that even a king wouldn't spy on everyone in the capital, would he? How could a mere Fish Dragon King be worth the attention of a king? Han Fei was taken aback for a moment. Good heavens, how much spirit spring was there? Not daring to say it aloud, Han Fei thought to himself, "This is 200,000 caddies, this is 180,000 caddies, this is 280,000 caddies, this is..." Han Fei poured all the spiritual spring into a sun-moon shell. After weighing it in his hand, he estimated that it weighed more than 3 million kilograms. In addition to his own reserves, it was close to 4 million caddies. The old tortoise said, "Don't forget, this is your residence now. You should have your own stash." Right, the Fish Dragon King can't bring all his wealth to the front line. Especially for someone as conceited as him, he would never bring all the good stuff to the front lines, because he disdained it. Instead of sorting out the resources immediately, Han Fei went straight into the Fish Dragon King's residence. How should he put it? The Ichthyosaur King was quite warlike. Damn it, there wasn't even a chair at home. What came into view were 7 to 8 long spears placed in every corner of the room. There were no decorations on the surrounding walls, only spear marks. Except for one wall. On that wall, the Fish Dragon King made a picture of a Jiao dragon with golden sand. However, the Jiao dragon looked strange and looked a bit like a dragon. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. So, this Fish Dragon King was probably confused by his name and bloodline and yearned for creatures like dragons. However, he had never seen a dragon before, so he made such a weird picture of a Jiao dragon. In front of this wall, there was a big chair with a tortoise shell as its back and a crab's pincers as its support, like a throne piled up with steel. It could be seen that the Fish Dragon King was not only extremely proud, conceited, but also particularly narcissistic. If it was anyone else, who would pile up a throne in their own home? Only people like the Fish Dragon King would do that. Seeing this throne, Han Fei suddenly had an urge to sit on it. Wait, why the hell should I sit on it? Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed slightly. Something was wrong. This was the side effect of the mind-manipulating technique. He had always thought that the reason he could act like the Fish Dragon King was because of his good acting skills. But at this moment, when Han Fei saw this ugly throne, he suddenly realized a question. Was it because of his good acting skills, or was it because of the Fish Dragon King's memory itself that influenced him? Before he used the mind-manipulating technique, Han Fei felt that he was much stronger than the Fish Dragon King, so there wouldn't be any problem. But now it seemed that there was still an impact. Ha! The old turtle has bad intentions. Fortunately, I only read the memory of one Fish Dragon King. However, Han Fei didn't panic. Anyway, he was going to play the Fish Dragon King now, so he had to sit on the throne. Han Fei sat cross-legged on the throne, casually flipped open a piece of fish skin in front of his knees, and revealed a switch. After turning it on, there was a sun-moon shell and 3 sea-swallowing seashells inside. Han Fei couldn't help but grin. Sure enough, rich people are different. Sun-moon shells were popular in the Shuemu sky. And this was when the Fish Dragon King went to the front line and had brought a lot of resources. Otherwise, there should be more resources here. Half an hour later, Han Fei counted the number of resources he had obtained. There were 5 million caddies of spiritual spring. The combined resources of just 4 heavenly talents from the Baibei Royal City were not much less than that of the Free Valley of the Iceberg City. In addition, there were more than 800,000 caddies of spirit awakening fluid. This was not a lot. It was estimated that these people might have already cultivated their companion spirits. After all, sea demons seem to only have one companion spirit, and no other creatures seem to have contractual spiritual beasts except for human beings. There were 10,821 spiritual energy fruits, 8,645 energy fruits, 482 poisonous and detoxifying fruits of various colors, and 566 spiritual fruits. There were 2 high-quality divine weapons, 13 mid-quality divine weapons, and as many as 42 low-quality divine weapons. There were more than 80 high-quality divine weapons. As for the other materials, they had to be counted in tons. After all, a lot of resources were needed to refine a good weapon. In addition to these basic items, there were more than 120 combat skills of sea demons. There were more than 60 fish skin maps. Han Fei searched in his mind and found that there were only 5 places that hadn't been marked by the Life Queen. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't have time to explore secret realms now. He could only go there when he had the chance. What if the water fairy's body was there? According to the sea map given to him by the Life Queen, the target was actually very clear, which was the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. However, how could the people of the Waterwood Heaven enter these 2 places? Fortunately, Han Fei appeared. He had many tricks and could even turn into a sea demon. How could the Life Queen not use such a free talent? However, Han Fei checked the sea map and finally determined that the locations of these places were within 200,000 kilometers of the Baibei royal city. It wasn't that Han Fei didn't believe it, but that these places were too close to the Baibei royal city. If the water fairy's body was here, with so many venerables, Dao-seeking state demons, and even kings, how could they not discover the secret realms nearby? Throwing away these treasure maps, Han Fei was a little annoyed. It seemed that he had come to a disadvantage. The water fairy said that he could sense her body within 10,000 kilometers with the lotus petals. But now, the entire royal city was only 50 kilometers long and wide. If he had to count the entire abyssal chasm, it should be less than 10,000 kilometers. It could be seen that the water fairy's body wasn't in the Baibei royal city. He had to find an opportunity to explore the 500,000 kilometer radius of this place. Otherwise, he would have to find a way to escape from the Baibei royal city and go to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. After sorting out the resources, Han Fei didn't have time to use them, nor could he deduce anything in the Baibei royal city. Having no choice, Han Fei could only begin to practice the demon god scripture. This technique was quite extraordinary. If a king saw it, they would probably think that the reason for his rise was related to this technique. In that case, he would successfully deceive another king. Naturally, Han Fei couldn't make another breakthrough here. After all, he had just advanced to the Dao-seeking state and hadn't even consolidated it yet. And his real strength was already at the peak level of a junior explorer. This speed was already extremely fast. After all, the explorer realm was no longer the sea demon realm. It wasn't something that could easily rise to the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th level just because you had enough resources. However, at this stage, he needed to lay a solid foundation in order to become an intermediate explorer. Half a month later. Dum. 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 Gue Sanqing stood outside the courtyard and said, "Young master, it's time for the trial." Han Fei suddenly got up. He had already stuffed all the resources into Forge the Universe, so that he could feel at ease. Outside the gate, a half-mermaid said respectfully, "Master Dragon King, I'm here at the order of Venerable Changshui to invite you to the trial field." Han Fei's heart slightly moved. After waiting for half a month, the trial finally came. Chapter 1275. The trial grounds of the Sea Demon King City were a bit like the Thousand-Star Trial Ground and the Three Holy Lands in the Thousand-Star City. The difference was that these trial secret realms didn't have strange things like memory loss. In the center of the Baibei Royal City, there were 5 teleportation arrays. According to the difficulty of the trial, they were divided into easy, normal, hard, purgatory, and forbidden areas. According to the color of the teleportation arrays, they were white, green, blue, purple, and black. Each of the 5 teleportation arrays was about 100 meters in diameter. Among them, people often went in and out of the easy and normal teleportation arrays. In the Baibei Royal City, everyone had to go to the trial, which was a mandatory requirement. Therefore, under normal circumstances, these trial secret realms were always kept open in case of inconvenience. About 80% of the residents of the Baibei Royal City wandered between the easy and normal trials, which meant that a few people would go in and out of the arrays most of the time every day. Of course, teleportation arrays were just teleportation arrays. Behind each teleportation array, there was more than one trial secret realm. As long as you entered the teleportation array, it meant that you had chosen this difficulty. As for which trial you wanted to go to, no one cared whether it was difficult or not. When Han Fei arrived, this semi-venerable expert seemed to have been waiting for him. Seeing Han Fei's arrival, this person took a deep look at the Fish Dragon King and then nodded slightly. Because few people go to the Forbidden Trial Ground, most people don't know much about it. "I'll go with you and give you some answers." Han Fei was a little indifferent. This person was named Yu Tianxin. He was very strong and was known as the top Dao-seeking expert in the Baibei Royal City. He didn't expect that this person was also responsible for the opening of the Forbidden Trial Ground. Han Fei nodded. In that case, thank you very much, Master Tianxin. In front of the teleportation array, there happened to be a group of about a dozen people, who seemed to be going to the trial ground together. However, as soon as they arrived, they were surprised to see the Fish Dragon King and Yu Tianxin, the top Dao-seeking expert in the Baibei royal city, standing in front of the black teleportation array, which was the forbidden trial ground. Then, under the gazes of the others, the two of them actually walked in one after the other. They could only see black light flowing and a dense fog covering the place. Where were the two of them? However, the 12 or 13 people were all stunned. It was not the first time that the trial field had been used, but they had never seen the teleportation array in the Forbidden Land being used. How could it be used this time? Someone exclaimed, "Who was that just now?" He actually went to the Forbidden Land trial grounds. Someone had a complicated look on his face. Looks like you haven't been here for long enough. You don't even know the Ichthyosaur King. He's famous for being arrogant and condescending. Someone sighed and said, "Didn't the Ichthyosaur King just fight with Prawn Yue? It seems that its strength is still inferior to Prawn Yue's. Is it going to the Forbidden Ground now?" Someone shook his head slightly. How could it be that easy to pass the Forbidden Area trial grounds? This Ichthyosaur King is arrogant and conceited. I don't think he has much chance of surviving. When Han Fei followed Yu Tianxin into the trial field of the Forbidden Area, he saw a cliff full of weird wrinkles, on which there were 4 dark caves. Each of the 4 caves had a name written above them. They were, Well of the Abyss, Yao Ceiling Pagoda, Thunder Prison, Sea of Divine Demons. Just by looking at the names, Han Fei knew that none of the 4 places seemed to be simple. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called the Forbidden Land Trial Grounds, a place that even heavenly talents had a slim chance of surviving. In the memory of the Ichthyosaur King, there was no memory of any of the 4 places. Therefore, when Han Fei saw the 4 trial grounds, he couldn't help but be stunned. They looked too weird. However, before Yu Tianxin said anything, Han Fei suddenly felt that the lotus petal in Forge the Universe that the water immortal left for him trembled slightly. Han Fei was shocked and his heart surged. Did I come to the right place? As if noticing Han Fei's shock, Yu Tianxin said lightly, "This is the Forbidden Land trial grounds that you want to come to. There are only 4 places in total. Since you insisted on taking a try, now that your wish has been fulfilled, I can briefly explain it to you." Yu Tianxin pointed to the Well of the Abyss and said, "That secret realm is an extremely deep undersea cave. There is a universe inside the cave, which is connected to a certain big abyss on the Wall of Death. There are sea beasts running amok there. They don't care whether you are a sea demon or not. In their eyes, you are just food." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Connected to the Wall of Death? Yu Tianxin smiled faintly. Although the Wall of Death is terrifying, not everything is extremely terrifying. Although the Well of the Abyss is connected to the Wall of Death, since this place has been opened up as a trial ground, there will be opportunities for trials, and there won't be creatures that are stronger than you. Of course, not all places in the trial ground can be explored, so there should be many special places where powerful sea beasts may exist. Han Fei looked solemn. So, it is very likely that there are unknown existences beyond the scope of our ability in the Forbidden Land trial grounds? Yu Tianxin said, "The premise is that you can resist the temptation and don't explore some places that you can't reach." Han Fei's eyes directly crossed the Well of the Abyss and looked at the Demon Subduing Tower. Yu Tianxin said, "The Demon Subduing Tower is the Forbidden Land closest to the Wall of Death. As the name suggests, it's a place to suppress sea demons and fierce beasts. However, the sea beasts and big demons here come from the Wall of Death." Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Can the creatures in the Wall of Death come out? Yu Tianxin said, "The Wall of Death is just a kind of restriction of the Almighty after all. But any restriction will have some problems after a long time. The Wall of Death has been here for countless years. Isn't it normal that some small fish and shrimps occasionally leak out?" Han Fei asked, "Are the sea demons of different strengths locked together?" Yu Tianxin shook her head. Of course not. The tower is actually a cave, and the cave is naturally divided into different levels. The demon-subduing tower is an ancient place that existed before the White Shell Royal City. The king tried to enter it, but also sensed the danger from the bottom of the demon-subduing tower, so he failed. Han Fei's eyelids twitched, and he was dumbfounded. Huh? Seeing Han Fei's expression, Yu Tianxin smiled casually. Don't panic. That's the bottom of the demon-subduing tower. It's not a place that you and I can reach. The demon-subduing tower is divided into different levels according to the strength of the sea demons and fierce beasts it suppresses. There are 9 levels from top to bottom. They correspond to the sea spirit state, the peak stage of the sea spirit state, the Tao-seeking state, the peak stage of the Tao-seeking state, the demi-venerable state, the venerable state, the peak stage of the venerable state, the demi-king state, and the king state. As she spoke, Yu Tianxin couldn't help but look at Han Fei. I have to say that this demon-subduing tower is the most unsuitable for you. If you were still in the sea spirit state, with your talent, it would be very likely for you to break through it. However, you have reached the Tao-seeking state. You are the weakest among the 3 Tao-seeking states, and you may be torn apart if you enter it. Han Fei's heart did a flip. He hoped that the water deity wasn't in this demon-subduing tower. This was a place that could even suppress kings, so how could he possibly do anything to it? Logically speaking, going to the 5th level might be his limit, let alone a king state. Seeming to be very sure that Han Fei wouldn't choose the demon-subduing tower, Yu Tianxin looked at the Thunder Prison and said, I'm not sure about this Thunder Prison. I can only say that Master Hai Tinglei cultivated here. Han Fei was slightly stunned. Master Hai Tinglei still needs to go to the forbidden trial field. Yu Tianxin said lightly, it's more like a training field than a trial field. In this space, what you have to face is endless lightning. The deeper you go, the stronger the lightning will be. It is said that you can see the creatures in the lightning at the end. In the end, Yu Tianxin pointed to the divine demon sea. Among the 4 forbidden secret realms, the first 3 have their own characteristics. The safety of the divine demon well can be high or low. It all depends on your luck. The demon-subduing tower has experienced countless years of accumulation. It can be said that no matter which level you go to, the creatures you meet must be extremely powerful. In the Thunder Prison, as long as you are confident that you can withstand the lightning, it is relatively the least dangerous. Han Fei couldn't help but narrow his eyes. What about the Divine Demon Sea? Yu Tianxin said lightly, the Divine Demon Sea is in the Wall of Death. Pooh! Han Fei looked at Yu Tianxin in shock. Are you kidding me? I can go to the Wall of Death. Yu Tianxin curled her lips. Don't look at me. I said that the Wall of Death has been sealed for too long. It's possible that a place is accidentally damaged. The Sea of Gods and Demons was such a place. It was just that the king had used special methods to reconstruct the seal and repair the damaged areas. The disadvantage is that the king will use some unknown method to reflect the creatures in the Wall of Death. Also, it may not be one, but a group. Han Fei, hearing Yu Tianxin's explanation, Han Fei was speechless. It didn't sound simple at all. If there was a suitable place, it would be the Thunder Prison. This place was definitely suitable for his cultivation. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, how long can I stay in the Forbidden Secret Realm? Yu Tianxin said lightly, there is actually no limit. If I have to set a time, it will be 7 days in the Well of the Abyss and the Demon-Subduing Tower, 3 days in the Thunder Prison, and 1 day in the Divine Demon Sea. The reason why I set this time is to confirm that you are still alive. Han Fei keenly grasped the word, no limit, and couldn't help but ask, no limit? Yu Tianxin said, the purpose of setting the time is to confirm that you are still alive. If you think you can stay in there all the time, you can come out first and explain the situation to Master Changshui Qin. Then you can go in again. Chapter 1276. Han Fei glanced at the lotus petal in Forge the Universe. Except for the slight tremble at the beginning, the lotus petal didn't move at all. As if he knew what Han Fei was thinking, the old turtle's voice sounded, "It's not because your master is within 10,000 kilometers of you, but because your master is in one of the 4 forbidden areas, and these forbidden areas may be very far away from you. But because of the teleportation entrances, the lotus petal can sense it. You just need to walk through the 4 entrances to know." Han Fei immediately understood that he had already chosen his way. No matter which forbidden area the water deity was in, he would choose the Thunder Dungeon. Because of his physique, the Thunder Dungeon wouldn't let him die. Besides, after choosing the Thunder Dungeon, he might be able to cultivate faster. After all, he had the Spirit Spring water and energy fruits on him. He was not lacking in anything. With the help of the thunder, he might even be able to improve his indestructible body. Yu Tianxin looked at Han Fei. "Have you made up your mind?" Han Fei walked straight to the Well of the Abyss. Yu Tianxin wasn't surprised by Han Fei's choice. After all, although the Well of the Abyss was dangerous, a good choice might help him avoid most of the dangers. However, when Yu Tianxin saw Han Fei walk to the entrance of the Well of the Abyss, he turned around and walked directly to the Demon Ceiling Tower. Yu Tianxin couldn't help but frown. Although the Demon Ceiling Tower is the place with the most opportunities, it's definitely the most dangerous place. It's extremely dangerous for you to go in with your strength. However, Han Fei didn't listen to Yu Tianxin. Instead, he concluded that the water deity wasn't in the Well of the Abyss. When he walked straight to the entrance of the Demon Ceiling Tower, the lotus petal in Forge the Universe slightly trembled again. Han Fei glanced at Yu Tianxin calmly and said, "I'm not choosing myself. I'm letting my bloodline choose." Yu Tianxin couldn't help but frown. "Bloodline has this function. Don't bully me because I don't have a bloodline. My bloodline is not necessarily worse than your Dragon King bloodline." However, when he saw Han Fei continue to walk in the direction of the Thunder Dungeon, he couldn't help but smile secretly. The Thunder Dungeon and the Divine Demon Sea were more dangerous than the first 2. However, Yu Tianxin saw Han Fei suddenly stand still at the entrance of the Thunder Dungeon and look into it. He stood there for about 10 seconds, and Yu Tianxin didn't know what he was thinking. Han Fei thought to himself that the acting should be enough, so he turned back. "I choose the Thunder Dungeon." Yu Tianxin narrowed her eyes. "Are you sure? Although the Thunderbolt prison only has the Thunderbolt baptism, you should know that the time limit is 3 days. This also meant that the Lightning prison was actually a more dangerous place than the Well of the Abyss and the Yao Ceiling Tower. Second only to the God Fiend Sea." Han Fei said proudly, "I choose the Thunder prison." Yu Tianxin knew that the Fish Dragon King was a heavenly talent no matter how arrogant and bad-tempered he was. Since they were geniuses, they naturally had their own perseverance. Han Fei didn't know why the Fish Dragon King was so confident to enter the Thunder Dungeon. Maybe it was because of his bloodline, or maybe it was because of his luck. Anyway, he was just showing the way for him. After all, there were very few people who would propose to enter the trial field of the Forbidden Area. Therefore, he had to treat every one of them seriously. No one would joke about their own life. Without strength, they wouldn't be able to come out after entering. Those who were strong, such as the Fish Dragon King, were more or less confident. However, it was hard to say whether they were confident enough to make it through. But if the Fish Dragon King made it through, he would be the center of attention. Seeing that Han Fei had made his choice, Yu Tianxin threw out a small seal and said, "Master Changshui Qin said that he would give you a chance." This is an attack that he sealed. Ordinary people don't have this chance. If you weren't forced to go through the tribulation by Shark Maru and the others, Master Changshui Qin wouldn't help you. This thing can probably save your life. Take care. I will wait for you here for another 3 days. Han Fei caught the small seal and said, "What if I don't come back in 3 days?" Yu Tianxin said, "I personally can wait for 1 more day. If you don't return in 4 days, I can basically assume that you have already died. The teleportation formation that leads to the forbidden trial field will be closed. I won't wait for you anymore." Han Fei couldn't help but pretend to frown. What if I was just delayed? Yu Tianxin shook her head slightly. Under normal circumstances, that possibility is very small. Although it's not impossible, I have already given you 1 day. If you still haven't come out, the probability of you dying is much higher than the probability of you being delayed. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, aren't you going to go in and have a look? Yu Tianxin couldn't help but sneer. Different levels of strength will lead to different situations after entering. The demon subduing tower clearly distinguishes levels. But in the other 3 forbidden areas, this distinction is very vague and hard to determine. But one thing is for sure, after I enter, the scene will be different from yours. Let's not talk about whether I can find you or not. The question is, why should I save you? Han Fei pondered for a moment and asked, how often does the forbidden area's trial field open? Yu Tianxin chuckled. Don't you know? Of course, it will only open when someone wants to challenge you. Why open it when there is no challenge? You should know that 5 years ago, Bei Nan challenged the forbidden area's trial field and returned with serious injuries. But because of that, he ranked 3rd on the top 10 heavenly talents list. Don't you know? Han Fei's expression didn't change. Of course I know. I was just asking. Okay, I know the rules. Let's go. He didn't chat with Yu Tianxin anymore. He didn't even look at the last divine demon sea. A secret realm that could reflect the creatures on the wall of death, the most difficult place among the 4 forbidden areas. He would only go there if there was a hole in his head. Holding the small seal, Han Fei walked to the entrance of the Thunder Dungeon. Of course, this was also a teleportation array. Otherwise, the lotus petal wouldn't have just trembled. The reason why he didn't choose to go to the demon subduing tower at the beginning was mainly that he could tell from Yu Tianxin's explanation that the creatures in the demon subduing tower had been accumulated over countless years. Even if they were raising poisonous insects, there wouldn't be any weak ones. If he went there, he would be at the Dao-seeking state, which was located on the 3rd floor of the demon subduing tower, combining the 3 realms of elementary, intermediate, and advanced. Although he shouldn't be unable to withstand it, this was the one that he had the least reason to choose. If he really went there, he was afraid that some people would suspect him, and he would be the focus of attention. Then even if he wanted to run away, it might be a problem. As for the teleportation array that Yu Tianxin said would be closed, Han Fei was not so worried, because when Hai Tinglei got there, Han Fei heard him punished by Wu Shu and Yu Qing, who ambushed him, to guard the demon subduing tower for 30 years. If that place was not the forbidden area, then there must be other ways. Han Fei couldn't help asking the old turtle, if I stay here, is there any way to get out? The old turtle couldn't help but say, how would I know? But there's no secret realm in the world that can't be broken, but it's not hard to say. It's normal to be trapped for 1,000 or 800 years. Han Fei was speechless. Trapped for 1,000 or 800 years. I can only stay in the Shuemu heaven for a total of 3 years. More than 5 months have passed. Time is running out. Han Fei immediately made up his mind to go out in 3 days, but he would delay him for 2 hours to prove that he could break the rules. As for what to do next, he would wait for 3 days. Han Fei went straight into the cave of the Thunder Prison. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. As soon as Han Fei appeared, 2 bolts of lightning struck down heavily, making him tremble all over. Han Fei was speechless. I haven't even seen where the hell is, and the lightning has already started. When Han Fei took a closer look, his face was full of surprise and astonishment, but as far as his eyes could see, there was only darkness. And in this dark sky, dense lightning flashed, one after another, illuminating this place that seemed to extend out of infinite darkness. Huh! Han Fei had just recovered from his shock when he heard the old turtle suddenly exclaim. Boom! Han Fei was hit by another bolt of lightning. If he guessed right, the probability of him being struck by lightning here was only once every few seconds. According to the calculation that each bolt of lightning had about the power of a junior explorer, Han Fei couldn't help but click his tongue. No wonder it was called the Forbidden Trial Field. He had just come in and stood at the door, and it was already like this. What would he do later? Of course, Han Fei could also stay at the door for 3 days and then go out. But would Yu Tianxin really not spy on him? Or would no one really inspect him after he went out? However, it was not important whether anyone would inspect him or not. Even if he stayed at the door, the lightning would strike every few seconds for 3 days and 3 nights in a row. Even he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Even ants could bite an elephant to death, let alone lightning. Chapter 1277. Boom. In just a moment, Han Fei had been struck dozens of times. He was so energetic that his energy was overflowing, and tiny electric arcs were jumping on his body. He said, "Old turtle, what are you looking at?" The old turtle pondered and said, "If I'm not mistaken, this place is unusual. It has the aura of the gods." Han Fei was stunned. "No. Wait a minute, what did you say?" "The aura of the gods." "Are you sure?" The old turtle said solemnly, "It can't be wrong. It's definitely the aura of the gods. There was once a god who fought in this world, so he left behind this everlasting thunder domain, but..." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "But what?" Han Fei was not a fool. As early as the Age of Doom, the Beast King and the others said that the gods had fallen for 30,000 years. Now, it should be 130,000 years. You fucking told me that someone fought here. Then this place has been struck by lightning for 130,000 years? And the frequency is so high. The old turtle was slightly puzzled. However, I feel a little strange. It's obviously the aura of the gods, but why is the power so weak? Even in the outermost area, it shouldn't be so weak. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. Is it weak? Han Fei pointed at the thunderbolts in the sky, and 2 more thunderbolts continued to bombard him with booms. Of course, Han Fei didn't take it seriously. Instead, he raised his head, looked at the shocking lightning in the sky, and waited for the old turtle's answer. He heard the old turtle said, "You go inside for a while. I'll tell you after I feel it." Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei couldn't help but despise him. "You're a disgrace to an almighty emperor. You really don't know anything." However, Han Fei still walked forward a kilometer at a time. Because he was moving very fast, the lightning bolts fell densely on him like raindrops. Of course, Han Fei didn't care at all. He had completely adapted to it now. Boom, rumble, after only 100 kilometers, Han Fei found that although the power of the lightning was not as terrifying as the heavenly tribulation, it was as powerful as the deduction of the void fishing art. Han Fei was not used to this kind of change in intensity. No way. How could the strength change so quickly? It was still fine when they were in the periphery, but how did they become so strong in just 100 kilometers? At that moment, the old turtle said, "Don't stop, continue forward." Han Fei was lost for words. "Old Yuan, are you trying to kill me? You think that this lightning can't kill me, so you want me to experience the power of the heavenly tribulation a few more times? Ha! How could this emperor not know you? Although I haven't seen this space clearly, I can confirm that with your physique, not to mention 100 miles further, even 1,000 miles further would be no problem for you. Do you think being half a golden body is a joke?" Han Fei frowned. "What are you talking about? Am I so powerful?" In fact, Han Fei didn't stop. He was still moving forward at a speed of 1 kilometer per step. After about 150 kilometers, the old turtle said, "Release the little black fish. The power of lightning is extremely young. Your little white fish has just swallowed the extremely cold blue sea smoothie, so the little black fish's yang power is weak. It's not a good thing in the long run. Now that we have this environment, you can let it eat for a while." Reminded by the old turtle, Han Fei immediately summoned Little Black and Little White with a flash between his eyebrows. The moment Little White appeared, it stuck to Han Fei's cheek. "Dad, I want to go home." Han Fei stretched out his hand and patted it. Little White returned to forge the universe, and Little Black jumped out and wandered in the sea of lightning. Han Fei thought to himself, the old turtle is right about that. Just like Little Black didn't like the blue sea smoothie, Little White didn't like the power of lightning either. While walking, Han Fei asked, Old Turtle, with my Little Black's ability, will he be able to reach a state of balance with Little White after staying in this lightning prison for a few more days? The old turtle sneered. What are you thinking? Do you think your Little Black fish swallowed lightning? Han Fei was confused. Isn't it? The old turtle said, they have connate Tao aptitudes. If they need energy, they can absorb it from the void. The reason why they swallow lightning is that there is a trace of the great Tao of extreme yang in the lightning. What they swallow is the power of the great Tao. However, they have been here for too long, and the power of the gods has been exhausted. So, unless your Little Black fish swallows the entire lightning prison, how can it be compared to the blue sea smoothie? Han Fei felt that 10,000 iron-head fish were galloping in his heart. Swallow the entire lightning prison? Are you kidding me? In the past few seconds, the lightning prison had struck tens of millions of lightning bolts. Do you mean that only after swallowing half of the lightning prison can it be compared to the blue sea smoothie? The old turtle said, so, the deeper you go, the stronger the great Tao of extreme yang that the Little Black fish swallows will be. One of them is equivalent to 10 of the current ones, or even 100 of them. However, Han Fei didn't have any hope for the lightning prison anymore. In the future, he would take Little Black to his junior sister and ask for the parasol fiery tree. 3,000 kilometers later. Han Fei suddenly stopped, because he found that cracks had appeared on his body. The power of the lightning seemed to contain some kind of killing intent that could already cut his skin. The old turtle also said, okay, that's enough. I've got it. Han Fei asked in confusion, what have you got? The old turtle said, this is indeed a place where the gods fight, but not against each other, but against ominous things. Ominous? Han Fei was slightly confused. Where did he hear this word? But what exactly was this ominous thing? Before Han Fei asked, the old turtle replied, you may not be happy if I tell you. You don't have any chance or qualification to know what it is. Even I have only heard about it from a venerable emperor. The ominous air has long been gone, so the remaining power of the gods is dispersing. Maybe in tens of thousands of years, the so-called lightning prison will be gone by itself. Han Fei asked casually, that's it? The old turtle asked, then what else do you want to hear? Han Fei rolled his eyes and said, what's the difference between telling me and not telling me? I just want to ask you, what opportunities are there in this lightning prison? If there are, let's get them out. We've finally come to the Sea Demon King City. We have to take something with us, right? The old turtle pondered for a while. The problem is that you are only half a venerable now. Even if you fully activate your secret techniques, you can only go another 2,000 kilometers forward at most. You can't get in touch with the real opportunities here. Who? While the two of them were talking, they suddenly heard the roar of a strange beast in the dark void. Han Fei was stunned. Didn't they say that the lightning prison was full of lightning and there were no creatures? Then who was the one who roared? Ha! Where's Little Black? Han Fei suddenly realized that Little Black was gone. It was too difficult to find Little Black now. It was pure black, the kind that could even swallow light. If he didn't pay attention, he would disappear into the darkness and never be found again. Fortunately, Little Black was his spiritual beast and he could sense it. So, Han Fei looked up at the sky, only to find that Little Black was chasing something blue thousands of meters high in the sky. Huh? The spirit of the thunder vein? Where did it come from? I didn't notice it in advance. The old turtle was always half a beat slower. Han Fei had long been used to this. At this moment, he was also scanning the blue dragon-like thing with his perception. The old turtle hurriedly said, don't use your soul perception. Boom! Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode, and he was stunned for 3 to 5 seconds. Then, he slowly came back to himself. After he woke up, Han Fei found that he was bleeding from his eyes, nose, and mouth. He wiped his nose with his hand, only to find that golden blood flowed out in large patches. Han Fei couldn't help but say angrily, "Why didn't you say so earlier? What's going on?" The old turtle was speechless. "Did you give me a chance to speak? It's fine if it's in other places, but the spirit of the thunder vein is a creature born in lightning. The power of the soul tends to be dark. Luckily, your soul power is not weak, and the spirit of the thunder vein is not strong enough. Otherwise, your soul would have been heavily injured." Han Fei immediately cast star transposition and chased after the spirit of the thunder vein in the void against the lightning. While chasing, he asked, "What's the use of the spirit of the thunder vein?" The old turtle said, "Nothing. It's just like the difference between turbid spiritual energy, regular spiritual energy, and pure spiritual energy. The spirit of the thunder vein is the essence of the power of lightning in the thunder prison. However, there shouldn't be many of them. Otherwise, if I swallowed 1,000 of them, I would have been able to absorb the power of the blue sea ice sand." Han Fei was dumbfounded again. 1,000? Then you'll have to swallow me. Seeing that little black and the blue snake were jumping and chasing each other in the sky, Han Fei joined the battle. As soon as the little blue snake saw Han Fei coming at such a fast speed, it roared, and the thousands of lightning bolts seemed to have found a target and bombarded directly at Han Fei. Boom! 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 Han Fei's body sank and he fell from the sky, with 7 or 8 cracks on his body. It was obvious that the lightning could hurt the body of a semi-venerable one. No wonder Yu Tianxin didn't suggest him to come to the thunder prison. Even if Yu Tianxin himself were here, he would have been badly bombarded. However, Han Fei certainly wouldn't let go of the meat in his mouth. With a low grunt, he opened his mouth and inhaled. Using the swallowing technique, the 1,000 bolts of lightning were swallowed by Han Fei in one gulp, and his body was swallowed until he became fat. Star transposition, where are you going? Chapter 1278. When Little Black and the spirit of the thunder vein chased each other, Han Fei also joined in. In terms of speed, Han Fei was extremely fast and couldn't be measured by the speed of a beginner Dao-seeking state cultivator at all. As soon as Han Fei made a move, the spirit of the thunder vein noticed that something was wrong. A large amount of lightning seemed to be controlled and blasted at Han Fei crazily. Han Fei was a little impatient. These lightning bolts were indeed very strong, but could they kill him? Not really. Han Fei even felt that if he wanted to use this lightning for cultivation, it might not be enough. Now the 4th level of the indestructible body had been broken, and the next level was to forge an indestructible body. And one of the features of the indestructible body was that it could be reborn from a single drop of blood. Although for a venerable powerhouse, rebirth from a single drop of blood was something that anyone could do. However, how could it be so easy for those who cultivated their bodies to return to their strength before the world annihilation? Therefore, this indestructible body was different from ordinary rebirth from a single drop of blood. Rebirth was just one of its abilities. In addition to rebirth, if the indestructible body broke through the 5th level, the next level should be the indestructible body in terms of soul. However, the indestructible body that Ren Tianfei gave him didn't mention the cultivation of the 6th level. This meant that if he broke through the 5th level, he wouldn't be able to cultivate the indestructible body anymore. At this moment, Han Fei, who was being bombarded by thousands of lightning bolts, grabbed at the dragon-like spirit of the thunder vein in the void at the risk of cracks appearing on his body. Huh! At the moment when the spirit of the thunder vein was grabbed by Han Fei, it seemed to be very anxious and let out a dragon roar as if it wanted to shatter Han Fei's soul. Huh! However, what responded to this spirit of the thunder vein was also a roar. To be precise, it was a roar. The dragon roared and the tiger roared. The two kinds of soul powers collided with each other, setting off layers of ripples in the sky. When Han Fei grabbed the spirit of the thunder vein, he found that cracks appeared on his arm one after another. At the same time, the spirit of the thunder vein seemed to regard Han Fei as the strongest and most dangerous enemy, frantically calling out lightning to bombard him. At this moment, Blackie also rushed forward. His sinister mouth was opened wide, and it was still completely black. Han Fei knew very well what Little Black was doing. He was going to swallow the spirit of the thunder vein. Immediately, Han Fei said, "Son, don't eat it. I still need it." Little Black was about to eat it, but Han Fei told it not to, which made it very depressed. However, Little Black and Little White never seemed to mind food very much. Therefore, since Han Fei wanted it, it certainly wouldn't force him to eat it. Seeing Little Black swish into the dark nothingness again, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. "I'm afraid that even I, its master, can't find it in the future." Ignoring Little Black, the spirit of the thunder vein captured by Han Fei was no longer as ferocious as before. This was a 3 feet long snake. A string of information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Thunder Vein Spirit. Introduction: a special creature that lives in a place where lightning gathers and feeds on lightning. Its body was formed from the accumulation of lightning essence energy. It was nurtured by a trace of Taoist rhyme that entered its body. It has the ability to control part of the lightning. It is extremely fast and can dodge in the lightning. Level a 66. Quality a none. Spiritual energy a none. Effect: it can temper the body, remove the impurities in the spiritual veins, and improve the physique. Collectible a none. Faced with such a creature that he didn't know exactly, Han Fei couldn't help but have an idea. For others, the Thunder Prison was an extremely dangerous place. But for him, it wasn't. Was there a better place for cultivation than the Thunder Prison? Almost none. These thunderbolts could provide him with almost infinite power. He had so much spiritual spring that it was enough for him to fill a river or take a bath. Besides, when Han Fei discovered that the spirit of the thunder vein could summon thunderbolts, he had an idea in his heart a long time ago. The indestructible body could be deduced. Before, Han Fei had never deduced the indestructible body because the path of body refinement was too difficult. With the help of the power of the heavenly tribulation, the indestructible body passed the 4th level of the indestructible body. At this level, the indestructible body was half golden, and the blood was golden, which made Han Fei's body take a big step towards the inhuman direction. However, if he wanted to continue to break through the indestructible body, ordinary thunderbolts couldn't help him at all. Unless, as the old turtle said, he could enter the deepest part of the thunder prison. But that was also impossible. Since these methods couldn't continue to improve the indestructible body in a short time, he had to find another way. Since the difficulty of cultivation is extremely high, it's possible for me to improve the upper limit of the quality of the cultivation method itself, right? While the old turtle was puzzled, he once again saw that in Han Fei's Forge the Universe, 100,000 caddies of spiritual spring had been swallowed by this world. 100,000 caddies of spiritual spring might not be a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount either. And it disappeared so strangely. This made the old turtle have to wonder. First of all, the disappearance of this spiritual spring must have something to do with the calabash. But what did Han Fei do? Why did the calabash eat 100,000 caddies of spiritual spring? However, there were some things that the old turtle was destined to be blind to. At this moment, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Indestructible tyrant body, heaven level, divine quality, introduction. This is a method to connect the body with the divine. By cultivating the skin, flesh, viscera, bones, and marrow, one can forge an indestructible golden body. Through the golden body, one can nurture an immortal soul. The body and the soul are combined to obtain the indestructible tyrant body. Deduced art, unknown deduction consumption, 1 billion disadvantage, extremely high requirements for physique. Note, don't focus on speed in body refining, it needs to be steady and steady. When Han Fei saw this message, he quickly browsed through the content. Then, he was speechless to discover a fact: this so-called indestructible tyrant body, in fact, only had one more way to forge an immortal soul than the indestructible body. On the path of physical cultivation, there was nothing special about it than the indestructible body. At this moment, the method of forging the soul also made Han Fei's blood freeze. This combat skill said that in order to forge the strongest soul, one must crush and obliterate it. And the first step of this obliteration method was called physical suffering. The general meaning was that the body was a foreign object, but the spirit could last forever. Therefore, when one day he could ignore the physical pain, it meant that he had mastered the indestructible body. The second volume of the Indestructible Tyrant Body was officially initiated. Han Fei was speechless. Damn it, isn't it killing me? My body is also my own body. I'm in excruciating pain, but I pretend that it's not me but someone else who is in pain. What kind of perverted mentality is this? Han Fei had wanted to take a shortcut and try to break through the physical barrier quickly with the indestructible tyrant body while the energy was infinite in this lightning prison. But now, he gave up. Sure enough, there were no shortcuts in this world. He hadn't even finished walking a path, yet he was already thinking of changing to a more effective method when he was only halfway there. However, while grabbing the spirit of the thunder vein, Han Fei secretly activated the indestructible body. When his flesh and skin became extremely hot, vitality slowly emerged in his body. The wounds that had been blasted apart recovered in a moment. And the struggling spirit of the thunder vein continued to summon lightning from time to time, which gave Han Fei enough time to cultivate. Although he couldn't make great progress in the 5th level of the indestructible body, the cultivation speed was definitely more than 10 times faster than the normal cultivation speed. Han Fei was even tempted. At this speed, he should be able to touch the level of a golden body in half a year at most. Unfortunately, he didn't come here for cultivation, but to find the water fairy. Now, Han Fei roughly knew the water fairy's whereabouts. It was in the demon subduing tower. He had to go to that place after all. As for this lightning prison, Han Fei had to pass the demon subduing tower to see if there was a way to sneak out of there. Thinking of this, Han Fei stopped caring about anything else and began to concentrate on cultivation. 3 days later, Little Black caught another 7 or 8 spirits of the thunder vein from somewhere. All in all, Han Fei saw Little Black strolling in front of him with the little snake in his mouth many times. And in the past 3 days, Han Fei sensed the growth of his physique and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Such high-intensity cultivation almost made him an idiot. He felt that his indestructible body hadn't even improved by 1%. At this moment, Han Fei realized that he had overestimated his cultivation speed. At this rate, it was basically impossible for him to reach the level of a beginner indestructible body and an indestructible golden body without staying in this lightning prison for a full year. He heard the old turtle say, "Your body is becoming stronger very quickly. I think you can really try to cultivate in this state for 10 years. With your resource reserves, 10 years is enough for you to cultivate to the peak of Tao seeking and achieve a golden body. Your strength can reach the level of a semi-venerable. In this barren land, there shouldn't be many people who can be your match." Han Fei curled his lips. "I'm not interested. I'm a man who will become a king. The entire yin-yang heaven is waiting for me to go back." Chapter 1279. In other people's eyes, the Thunder Dungeon was extremely terrifying. However, for Han Fei, it had become a place for body tempering. It could be seen that, although body tempering was difficult, it was also a great opportunity. Han Fei didn't believe that nobody knew the function of the Thunder Dungeon. However, there were probably only a handful of people who could cultivate here. Even if it was him, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he felt that he was already the strongest in the body refinement realm. Even so, after a long time, his skin was still cracked and he needed the indestructible body to revive himself. Outside the Thunder Dungeon, Changshu Qin was standing in front of the caves of the 4 forbidden areas, looking calm. Changshu Qin asked, 3 days? You mean he chose the Thunder Dungeon? Yu Tianxin nodded. Yes, he deliberately passed the Well of the Abyss and the Demon Subduing Tower. He didn't even look at the Sea of Gods and Demons. Changshu Qin nodded slightly. If this is the change of his bloodline, his demonic heritage must have improved. Otherwise, he couldn't have resisted the bombardment of the Thunder Dungeon, even though he has been staying at the entrance. Yu Tianxin was holding a heritage testing stone in her hand. Let's see if he can come out. Logically speaking, he should have already come out by now. When Yu Tianxin spoke, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and blood rushed out of the entrance of the Thunder Dungeon. The rolling blood, the flashing electric arcs on his body, and the scabs all over his body seemed to be proving how miserable he was. Seeing this scene, Yu Tianxin's expression changed slightly. He really came out alive? What did it mean? It meant that the Fish Dragon King had infinite potential in body tempering. It also meant that the opportunities the Fish Dragon King got during this trip were enough to support his body tempering to such a high level. Changshui Qin, on the other hand, looked at Han Fei casually and asked softly, "How do you feel?" Seeing Changshui Qin, Han Fei held his spear in one hand and was about to speak, when he opened his mouth and a lightning arc spurted out. The old turtle almost rolled his eyes in Han Fei's sea of consciousness. He had seen good actors, but he had never seen one as good as Han Fei. "Do I even have to act when I say something?" Han Fei's voice slightly trembled. "It's terrifying. Endless lightning strikes. No wonder it's listed as the second forbidden area." Changshui Qin said calmly, "It's not that the Thunder Dungeon is listed as the second forbidden area. The difficulty of the Forbidden Lands had no particular order. To different people, the difficulty was different." "How far have you traveled?" Han Fei frowned. "How should I put it? If it was at the entrance, it would be meaningless. However, if he advanced too much, he would only be suspected for no reason." Han Fei thought for a moment, and his voice was accompanied by electric arcs. 300 kilometers away at most. What Han Fei meant was, "I also went out a long way, but I came back later." But even so, Changshui Qin couldn't help but be a little surprised. He thought that Han Fei had probably walked about 50 or 100 kilometers. As for staying where he was, that was impossible. Changshui Qin didn't believe it either. He knew that the Fish Dragon King's arrogant personality would not allow him to stay. However, the result of 300 kilometers really made Changshui Qin look at Han Fei in a new light. Yu Tianxin couldn't help but narrow his eyes. "Fish Dragon King, are you sure you can go as far as 300 kilometers? Although Reverend Changshui and I haven't seen it with our own eyes, we can make a rough judgment based on your strength. We can analyze it through the results of your future trials." Han Fei scorned in his heart. "What the hell? It's only 300 kilometers, and you're already so shocked. Then what if I say that I cultivated for 3 days and 3 nights in a place more than 3,000 kilometers away?" But on the surface, Han Fei's face sank. "I, the Fish Dragon King, don't lie. 300 kilometers is not worth my lie." Yu Tianxin nodded slightly. "Of course we won't doubt you. You've already proved your strength by coming out alive. However, since you can stay in the Thunder Prison for 3 days, does it mean that your demonic heritage has indeed changed? Reverend Changshui and I need to take a look." With that, Yu Tianxin threw the heritage testing stone in his hand to Han Fei. Han Fei seemed to have known that this would happen, so he had been prepared. Han Fei grabbed the heritage testing stone with one hand and injected demonic energy into it. Suddenly, the purple light turned from purple to dark red, indicating that it hadn't reached level 9. However, this degree of intensity was obviously the limit of a level 8 demonic heritage. Seeing this, Yu Tianxin couldn't help but say in surprise, "Level 8, high quality?" Yu Tianxin couldn't help looking at Changshui Qin, but the latter's expression still didn't change much. However, Changshui Qin said, "It's not bad. From level 8, low quality to level 8, even a little higher. You've tried to break through to level 9, haven't you?" Han Fei's body trembled imperceptibly. The old turtle was speechless. This kid is indeed a very careful liar. Seeing Han Fei's reaction, Changshui Qin couldn't help but smile. "It seems that I still underestimated your gains this time. It seems that the power of your bloodline has improved your overall strength by at least 2 levels. Do you still want to continue this trial?" Han Fei pretended to be hesitant. He needed to show a certain talent and at the same time, show that he was still a little bit lacking. Han Fei hesitated for a while before he said slowly, Reverend Chang Shui, can you give me 3 months? 3 days is really too short. Chang Shui Qin said indifferently, 1 month. I don't care what opportunities you have obtained. But if you can repeatedly cultivate in the Thunder Prison for a month, maybe your strength will soar. But if you stay for 3 months, I'm afraid that your improvement will be too fast, which will inevitably affect the polishing of your foundation. Han Fei was overjoyed. Sure enough, pretending to be a genius was useful. Otherwise, it would be good enough if he didn't slap you to death when negotiating with someone like Chang Shui Qin. Han Fei gritted his teeth. Okay. Thank you, Reverend Chang Shui. 1 month it is. Senior Tianxin, are you going to wait outside? Or come back in a month? In fact, Han Fei didn't care whether Yu Tianxin was here or not. He wanted to go to the Demon Ceiling Tower, but he couldn't go there directly. Because with his current strength, the Demon Ceiling Tower was the most unsuitable forbidden place for him. However, he was not the real Fish Dragon King. As long as Chang Shui Qin was not here, he could sneak into the Demon Ceiling Tower from the Thunder Prison without Yu Tianxin noticing. Yu Tianxin slightly shook his head. I'll come back in a month. This is a test. Since you want a month, it means that you've already considered it. You have to have the qualifications to enjoy all the generous treatment. Don't you have anything to promise? The forbidden secret realms of the Baibei royal city were rarely opened. But as long as they were opened, they would be given enough attention. If Han Fei performed well, then both his identity and status would rise. But if Han Fei only became a little stronger, he could only maintain the treatment of the top 10 heavenly talents at best. This was a status that could be exchanged with one's life. Many people could do this, but they wouldn't. After all, they might lose their lives if they made a mistake. Han Fei was overjoyed. It's great that you're not here. If you're not here, I'll have time to play in the Demon Ceiling Tower. Chang Shui Qin glanced at Han Fei casually. I hope you can show me more different things. Try more. If level 8 high quality can become level 9, you should know what it means. Han Fei nodded solemnly. In fact, Han Fei was laughing like a pig in his heart. Han Fei sat cross-legged and began to recover, which was a matter of course for Chang Shui Qin. There was only 1 month. Han Fei needed to prove his value and plasticity in this month, so he raced against time. After about 10 minutes, the old turtle's voice sounded in Han Fei's heart, okay, stop pretending. These 2 people have already left. Phew. Han Fei was relieved. Old turtle, each of the 4 realms must be extraordinary. Tell me, can't you use your emperor's power for a while? Wouldn't it be better if we emptied these 4 forbidden realms? The old turtle couldn't help but roar, if I could use the king power, would I have been imprisoned in your sea of consciousness by your gourd? If I could use the king power, it wouldn't have taken me a day to possess your body. Han Fei said awkwardly, okay. That's bullshit. In that case, we can come back when we have time in the future. For now, we should go to the Demon Ceiling Tower. Can you feel the closure of the teleportation array here? The old turtle scoffed. Even if you are an array master, can't you understand? Of course it's closed. But you can open it at any time. If you're not in a hurry, stay outside for another day and then go in. Thinking of this, Han Fei agreed with him. As the saying went, haste makes waste, so he had to wait. 1 day later. There was no movement from the teleportation array. Han Fei pinched his fingers to make sure that no one was watching him. Then he walked quickly to the cave where the Demon Ceiling Tower was located. Chapter 1280. Han Fei remembered that Hai Tinglei had sent by Wu Shu and Yu Qinglai to guard the demon-subduing tower. Therefore, Han Fei felt that he might appear in front of these 2 people after entering the cave. At that time, he could threaten and bribe them. He could tell these 2 people that as long as they didn't tell anyone that he had been here, he could take them as his followers and take them back from there. Han Fei believed that no one could resist such a temptation. After all, 30 years was not a short time. Instead of being reduced to guarding the gate in such a dangerous place, they would definitely know how to choose. However, the moment Han Fei stepped into the cave of the demon's subduing tower, he seemed to have fallen into a whirlpool and appeared in an undersea jungle. Han Fei was stunned and asked in surprise, "Undersea jungle? Where is the demon subduing tower?" The old turtle said, "I don't feel very good. You don't seem to have appeared outside this demon subduing tower, but directly inside it." Huh? Han Fei was stunned. This teleportation array led directly to the inside of the demon subduing tower. Then as long as he did the opposite, wouldn't the creatures in the demon subduing tower also be able to come out from here? The old turtle said leisurely, "The way you came in is gone." Han Fei hurriedly looked back, and his heart skipped a beat. "Where is the way?" The old turtle said, "Maybe you didn't say that you wanted to come to the demon subduing tower, so Changshuqin and Yu Tianxin didn't have to tell you the way out of the demon subduing tower. It seems that you might as well have chosen this demon subduing tower from the beginning. At least you know how to come out." Han Fei couldn't have felt better. What the hell is going on? Where is the demon subduing tower? Shouldn't it be a huge tower? Are there countless powerful creatures suppressed in the tower? If there was a loophole in this place and someone took advantage of it and opened up a path, how could the creatures inside not notice it at all? Han Fei immediately said, "No, in terms of arrays, there is no absolutely perfect array in this world. Since I can come in, I can definitely go out. There must be an array here, but it was hidden the moment I appeared." Then, he heard the old turtle cry out, "Are you sure that the path you came in through was a spell formation?" Han Fei's eyelids twitched, and then his face darkened. He said helplessly, "Can't you say something auspicious?" The old turtle said disdainfully, "In the world of cultivation, often the path you can't think of, or are unwilling to think about, is the answer. At the very least, I didn't feel any teleportation formation. It should be the laws of space." Han Fei was about to taunt the old turtle, when he subconsciously moved his body away. The next moment, a pale yellow light pierced through the void and appeared directly where Han Fei was just standing. "What is it?" Han Fei's expression changed slightly. In the blink of an eye, dozens of similar lights appeared. To be precise, there were more than 30 of them, and they came from all directions. Buzz! The invincible will condensed and a golden giant protected Han Fei in it. He stomped his feet, and the coiled tortoise array and the soul driving array appeared at the same time. The 64-dimensional fish dragon dance subconsciously appeared. Even so, the speed couldn't be compared with the speed of light. Even though that yellow light didn't seem to be real light, its speed seemed to be even faster than the revolving star transposition. This was why Han Fei didn't use the star's passage technique. Puff puff, the coiled tortoise array was directly blasted through, and the yellow light directly passed through the soul driving array. It seemed that it was not a soul attack. However, when the yellow light collided with the invincible will, Han Fei clearly felt a pain in his head as if being pricked by a needle. Could that weird thing corrode the will? Fortunately, Han Fei dodged fast enough. Only 2 or 3 yellow lights fell on him, but they were blocked by the invincible will. Although there were still yellow lights shooting at him, Han Fei reacted extremely quickly. "Huh!" Han Fei roared, turned around, and blasted out a sacrificing punch. The bright red light pierced through the void, crushing all the way, and traversed dozens of kilometers. This was Han Fei's current strength, which was no longer the same as when he was a law enforcer. At the moment when the sacrificing punch was blasted out, Han Fei activated the Heavenly Void Divine Walking technique and chased after the sacrificing punch. Han Fei wanted to see what kind of creature was attacking him. Because when he released his perception, Han Fei felt a trace of danger. It seemed that when he released his perception, there was a feeling of being pulled, as if someone was going to eat his perception. The Heavenly Void Divine Walking technique was very fast, wasn't it? Walking in the half-real and half-illusory space, Han Fei felt that even the yellow light shouldn't be able to keep up with him. However, something horrifying happened. Han Fei turned his head and found that in the void, the yellow light was still there. There was a light trying to catch up with him and kill him. Han Fei was stunned. What the hell is this? Damn, is this a physical attack or a magic attack? Of course, Han Fei also pointed his finger backhandedly, and spiritual energy surged, shaking and exploding. It wasn't too difficult, and the yellow light was deflected. Boom! According to the power of the explosion, Han Fei could roughly judge the power of this yellow light. It wasn't very strong, only about the power of an intermediate Dao-seeking state. After shattering an attack, because the speed was extremely fast, Han Fei had already followed the path of the sacrificing punch before all the other attacks had time to arrive. He crushed all the yellow light that came at him, shattering all the yellow light that came at him. It was also at this moment that Han Fei saw a kind of terrifying demonic plant. It was shaped like deformed fingers and supported by a long and flat palm, which looked like a human hand. When it launched an attack, the palm-like demonic plant pointed all 6 fingers in Han Fei's direction. It seemed to want to resist the sacrificing punch. However, how could it resist Han Fei's all-out attack? It was not a peak-level Dao-seeking state, let alone a semi-venerable. How could it suppress Han Fei? In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name: Six-fingered coral. Introduction: a strange creature that coexists with demonic plants and insects. It has the ability to corrode. Concentrated by it, a large number of corrosive worms will parasitize and devour the vitality and soul of the host until the host grows into a new six-fingered coral. The six-fingered coral and the sea flower are natural enemies. With the tentacles of the sea flower, the crisis of corrosive worms can be solved. Level S75 Equality Exotic Law Enforcement Corrosive Light. It contains spiritual energy greater than 123,364 points. Effect: inedible collectible. A spirit eroding worm fluid. Note: it's best not to kill it directly, otherwise the corrosive worms will spread throughout the area, looking for a host. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "Holy shit!" The space in front of him was directly twisted, and he appeared far away. Rumble! A terrifying explosion sounded, and the sacrificing punch directly blew up a large area of the six-fingered coral. In the seawater, there were colorful unknown particles floating everywhere. Han Fei was horrified. Damn, what kind of creature is this? He had been in the 100,000 mountains for so long, but he had never even heard of it. The old turtle said, "Well, it's just a six-fingered coral. It's nothing strange. As long as your defense is strong enough and your willpower is strong enough, it can't do anything to you. However, this six-fingered coral is too small, isn't it?" Han Fei had already retreated and stomped his feet. Fuse. When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei immediately felt that he was in an extremely good state. Through Little White's perception, he could clearly know where the source of danger was. Besides, after this fusion, Han Fei felt that through the coldness, the yellow rays of light could actually slow down when they shot at him. Han Fei was amused. It turns out that you're also afraid of the cold? Han Fei didn't need to fight with this kind of creature, but he wouldn't give up completely. He reached out and grabbed some spirit-eroding worm fluid, melted a little into his body, and was wrapped in spiritual energy, making it impossible for them to escape. The heaven spirit detoxifying insect directly hooked the mass of spirit-eroding worm fluid that Han Fei sent over. Then, it quickly stuffed it into its mouth. Good. Han Fei immediately grinned. Compared with Little Fatty and the others, the heaven spirit detoxifying insect's level was the highest. After all, he had walked all over the 100,000 mountains and had seen all kinds of demonic plants. Now, the heaven spirit detoxifying insect had reached level 58. This was the result of forcefully eating. How did it come out? Han Fei didn't know. Seeing this, Han Fei issued an order in his heart and the infinity water shot out. From Forge the Universe, Han Fei took out a piece of blank fish skin. As Han Fei drew an array with one hand, soon, in the array, the infinity water rolled towards the large pile of six-fingered coral that had just been cut, sealing the spirit-eroding worm fluid in it. Han Fei felt that it would be useless even if he ate too much. However, as a new poison, it shouldn't be a problem for the heaven spirit detoxifying insect to reach level 59. Sure enough, in a place like the demon ceiling tower, danger and opportunity coexisted. This was more exciting and challenging than the boring thunder prison. Of course, although Han Fei had collected a piece of six-fingered coral, it didn't mean that Han Fei liked to stay in such an environment. After all, this place was creepy and no one wanted to stay here. Just as he swam 100 kilometers away, Han Fei saw a lily on the rock wall of a mountain. However, it was much bigger than the lilies. Its tentacles were also much longer than the lily and looked very beautiful. After seeing such a beautiful flower, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. The more beautiful a creature was, the more likely it was to deceive people. A lily from the bottom of the sea. I've never seen it before. It was another creature that I've never seen in the 100,000 mountains. Sailor coral, also known as dead man's finger. Chapter 1281. Whether in the sea or on land, whether it was fish, demonic plants, or particularly colorful creatures, they were usually not good things. Of course, this lily was nothing compared to the colorful coral area. However, he had to make it clear where it was appearing. He didn't know where he was at all. In all directions, it was a dark undersea jungle. Only some luminous creatures were flickering, and the silence was a little scary. In the seawater, there seemed to be a little gray color, not as gorgeous as the coral reef area. Of course, this was not what surprised Han Fei. What really horrified him was that the lily seemed to be born out of thin air. Or, Han Fei was also sure that he probably appeared on the third floor of the demon-suppressing tower, which was the level of Tao-seeking state creatures. However, could a mere Tao-seeking state creature make him feel a sense of crisis? Han Fei couldn't help frowning. Old turtle, if I'm not mistaken, this should be this kind of demonic plant that drilled through the space and directly appeared here, right? The old turtle seemed a little absent-minded. Do you still need to guess? Isn't it obvious? Of course, Han Fei knew. It was just that he wanted to chat with the old turtle in this weird atmosphere. Seeing that the old turtle didn't want to chat, Han Fei confirmed a direction through his perception after merging. There was a large area of rock walls. But behind the layers of rock walls, through Little White's perception, Han Fei was very sure that there were terrifying creatures in that place. Over there, it should be the thing that tried to devour his perception power when he came in just now. Han Fei didn't really want to deal with these creatures. Just like where the six-fingered coral was just now, fortunately, he didn't appear in their encirclement but on the periphery. Otherwise, the movement couldn't have been so small. And now, as soon as he rushed out of that area, he immediately saw a lily. From the perspective of natural enemies, this lily should be the sea flower, the nemesis of the six-fingered coral. How strong was the six-fingered coral? How disgusting were its combat skills? The flower of the sea might not be any better. However, when he tried to find a relatively safe route on the third floor of the demon-subduing tower, he found that in Little White's perception system, the most dangerous place and the safest place both pointed to the direction of the sea flower. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh at himself. No wonder the Yao Ceiling Pagoda was so dangerous. In other words, the flowers had blocked off all the roads. There's only one path left. It would be strange if it wasn't dangerous. Han Fei had made a rough judgment in his heart. Perhaps the third level of the Yao Ceiling Pagoda was also a way to select the strongest. In any case, Han Fei absolutely didn't believe it. You're telling me that there are no big demons except for two kinds of plants in a demon-suppressing ancient land that has existed for God knows how long. Of course, he didn't believe it. Therefore, Han Fei firmly believed that as long as he passed the flower of the divine sea, he would be in a different situation. Immediately, Han Fei stretched out a giant hand of void spiritual energy and grabbed the lily. However, just as the big hand of spiritual energy was about to need it, the feather-shaped tentacles of the lily grew thousands of tentacles in a hurry. Han Fei was also stunned. Is this the demonic plant in the sea? I was just testing it, but this damn thing even wants to eat my spiritual energy. Han Fei took a closer look. What's that? Feather-shaped tentacles. It's not a fucking tentacle at all. It's a living leech. Leeches could also be called water leeches, especially in the level 1 and level 2 fisheries. There were often horrible stories about water leeches passing through. However, Han Fei had never seen a leech covered with long tentacles. The reason why he was sure that this was a leech was that this leech had tentacle-like tentacles all over its body. At the moment when all the tentacles stretched out, Han Fei saw its body hidden under the tentacles. That soft, sticky thing, if it wasn't a leech, what was it? At the moment when Han Fei waved his void hand and squeezed it, a small part of it was cut off by this lily-like leech. Of course, the rest of the spiritual energy hand easily caught the leech and pinched it to death. Han Fei immediately activated his spiritual energy, and the infinity water turned into countless spiky water needles, protecting him in all directions. With the infinity water, Han Fei was not afraid that this leech had any special means to attack him. However, when this lily-like leech was pinched to death, Han Fei saw 1, 2, 3 more stretching out of the void. Han Fei was dumbfounded. I just pinched a flower to death. Why are there so many? No matter how many there are, aren't they afraid of being pinched to death by me? In this environment, he must have been discovered. Han Fei had no choice. Since the most dangerous place and the safest place were in the same direction, he had to rush forward by himself. Han Fei ran all the way in the most dangerous direction. He rushed mainly because he didn't want to give this leech a chance. Sure enough, when Han Fei began to rush all the way, he saw white and purple lilies around him one after another. Because these leeches appeared too frequently, it was inevitable that Han Fei would encounter them in the process of sprinting and couldn't stop in time. Therefore, no matter how fast Han Fei was and how sensitive his reaction was, he was still hit in the end. At that moment, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name a flower of the sea. Introduction: a strange creature that coexists with demonic plants and insects. It has countless tentacles that can pierce through the void, and on each tentacle there is an accompanying feather-shaped leech that can devour vitality, parasitize, and divide. The flower of the sea can continue the power of other creatures to some extent, so it can't continue its unique ability. Level S77 Quality: a legendary law enforcement devour. It contains spiritual energy greater than 155,172 points. Edible effect: if eaten for a long time, it can greatly increase your vitality and improve your physique. Collectible: void fruit. Void tentacles. Remarks: where the flower of the sea grows, all living creatures are kept alive by the flower of the sea. Sure enough. Han Fei immediately cursed in his heart. No wonder it's the sworn enemy of the six-fingered coral. It's impossible that the flower of the sea isn't as disgusting as the six-fingered coral. The two were born in the same space and have been fighting against each other for countless years. Their strength should at least be comparable. When Han Fei saw that the so-called flower of the sea seemed to coexist with leeches, he thought to himself, is this so-called flower of the sea a sea anemone? The symbiosis of leeches and sea anemones is really interesting. To be honest, Han Fei had never seen such a powerful sea anemone. A strange creature with level 77 strength should be much more dangerous than a sea anemone of the same type. Han Fei continued to rush forward, but after running for less than 300 kilometers, he saw a large area of white flowers and plants floating towards him. They were exactly the same as the marching sea leeches except for the different color. Han Fei couldn't help but frown when he saw such a small creature preying on such a large area. Han Fei frowned and the invincible will reappeared. The infinity water swooshed and began to spin crazily around him. Han Fei was not the kind of person who would hide his strength. This demon-subduing tower was much more dangerous than the Thunder Prison, so he would use all his means. Bam! 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 White and purple flowers exploded one after another, and more leeches came out. The bodies of the dead leeches began to split. Some split into 2, and some even split into 5 or 7 leeches, which was really creepy. Han Fei couldn't have felt better. Isn't this thing splitting too fast? In a few seconds, one leech split. At this speed, wouldn't it be very easy for it to eat up the entire third floor? The six-fingered coral wouldn't stand a chance. Thinking of this, Han Fei was sure that the division of leeches must be limited, and the enemies of the flower of the sea were definitely not just the six-fingered coral. However, at this moment, the flower of the sea didn't let him go. On the contrary, the number of leeches was increasing. Not just leeches, but void tentacles began to appear in the void. From the tentacles, a large number of purple, shrimp egg-like things spurted out. Han Fei's face sank. This soul ball wants to parasitize me. Sacrificing punch. Han Fei punched out. He decided to break through. He thought that only the six-fingered coral had the ability to parasitize, but it turned out that the flower of the sea also had this ability. Han Fei thought for a moment and immediately shouted, "Fusion!" Gemini Divine Technique. After the sacrificing punch bought him time, Han Fei directly performed the Gemini Divine Technique. And this time, he didn't turn into a human at all, but directly in the state of smoke. As soon as the divine technique was used, Han Fei felt that the so-called flower of the sea was just so. Within a radius of 100 meters of the white smoke, the leeches, tentacles, and fish rows that appeared were all frozen. The black smoke easily swept away, and all the ice was crushed into pieces. The flower of the sea was probably stunned at this moment. What the hell? Did he turn into smoke? More importantly, why couldn't the smoke get close? Large tracts of tentacles and leeches were withering. After 100 seconds, Han Fei finally saw a flower of the sea that was more than 300 meters tall and occupied a large area in the distance. Countless tentacles, all sucking leeches, were waving randomly. Seeing that Han Fei was coming, the tree shook as if it was frightened. Han Fei couldn't help but sneer. "You've lived for so long. That's enough. I'll take you in later."